and steps up and throws to the end zone, and Dixon is in. Touchdown.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Here's Gordon again. Jump cut in the hole. Bust it to the outside. And Gordon diving for the end zone. Touchdown, Oklahoma State.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Now the throw across the middle. That was caught. And on a broken tackle, J.P. Richardson. Touchdown.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
And here's Green. He's going to keep it. And Green breaks loose. Garrett Green across midfield and forced out of bounds at about the 25 by D. Winters.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Lance Leipold's group with the 14-zip lead on Matt Campbell's Iowa State team. And Jalen Nolan is out to the races. Down the sideline. Noel tripped up inside the 5.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
R.J. Harvey direct snap. He keeps it. And now UCF has a touchdown to start the ball game.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Smokey's out for the next couple days as he takes his last little mental health vacation before high school football season begins, which is a very hectic time. But Craig and I are here, Garrett, Emery, and Jack in studio as well. Lots to talk about today. Some interesting things going on in the world of college athletics as we inch closer to getting to talk about actual games. Just 2 days away from the season beginning, and we've got 3 games this weekend, FSU and Georgia Tech, SMU and Nevada, and I'm blanking on the one that's in the middle of those two, who the other one is, but those are the 3 games that are this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We probably need to know what games are coming up in this college football show. It'd probably be a smart thing to kind of have battened down at this point. So Western Carolina and NC State is next Thursday, so it wouldn't be that. So, yeah, I don't even know.
Montana State at New Mexico is the other game. But, yeah, so FSU and Georgia Tech in Ireland at 11 o'clock Central. Montana State and New Mexico at 3 o'clock Central, and at 7 o'clock Central, SMU at Nevada. So those are the games that are all on Saturday. And then everybody else kicks it off starting on Thursday this week. So that is going to be good. But one person who will not be at his team's first game this year is Iowa coach Kirk Ferentz. He and assistant coach have been suspended for a recruiting violation that occurred when they were talking to Cade McNamara, I guess slightly before he was in the transfer portal or before they could talk to him, but they will have to serve a 1-game suspension. So I'm not sure of completely all the details of this, but Kirk Ferentz, of all the coaches that would be suspended for this, just because he's such a formulaic guy, I just never figured that would be kind of in his thing. But also they had to report a Caden Proctor violation as well that happened around a guy who went back and forth between them and Alabama and ultimately wound up back at Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, to your first point, I'm excited to have some games here to talk about. I mean, we've talked everything imaginable from pretty much every angle, and 2 times, 10 times over, depending on the subject, over the last few months, which has been fun. And some days have been a bit more electric than others when it comes to the news and just movements and things like that. But, I mean, we're all college football fans, at least I am. I'm not a college football fan because I can't await the next tweet from Brett McMurphy or Pete Thamel, with all due respect. I like watching the games. So I'm so excited that we're at that point where all of the stuff we've been talking about can now – be put to the test and be put up against other people's moves that they made, and see who emerges from what should be the most interesting and different college football season maybe any of us will ever see in our lifetimes, quite frankly, because I can't imagine outside of something that is just changing the sport and the face of it in a significant way of like cutting it in half or something along those lines. I can't imagine how you could have another year as different as this one coming up from what we're accustomed to. So, yeah, this is exciting. You actually missed the game, Paul. Delaware State and Hawaii also play this weekend. So there's actually 4 games this weekend. So, yeah, we need to get ready for 4 games on Saturday, and that starts from 11 a.m. all the way till an 11 p.m. kickoff, 10:59 p.m. in Hawaii, to be exact, against Delaware State. So 4 games this weekend. So that's exciting that we'll get that. But, yeah, on Iowa, that's, just kind of a quirky thing I didn't expect to see. I saw a fun meme where somebody had I guess it was the Parks and Rec skit where Ron Swanson's like using the computer. I don't know, I don't watch the show, but he's like using the computer and he's got his little, what's her name?
April. April Ludgate.
Yeah.
I was thinking Aubrey Plaza's her
Aubrey
name,
Plaza, yeah.
April Ludgate is in the show.
Whatever. He throws the computer in the trash after he's using it or whatever, for whatever the purpose was. But if you went into it not knowing what the hell they were doing like me, but you just did the whole role of, it was Kirk Ferentz using the transfer portal for the first time. He gets busted and then he throws it into the trash can. That was the purpose of it. And it played really well for somebody like myself who had seen the show. But yeah, there's Kirk Ferentz. He's like, all right, I'm going to crack this transfer portal. And then he gets suspended like the very first time, So that's kind of how it feels. It's not something, like I said, you expected to see probably. But that's notable. I think it'll be more notable if they look drastically different than expected on the field that first week. I've seen the joke made 1,000 times already of, what if they go and they score like 60 points in this opening game without him at the helm? That would be hilarious if they did that, but I don't think that'll be in the cards necessarily. So, yeah, just interesting, and goes to show you there actually are rules. There are real rules that you have to follow that sometimes you can get in trouble for with the NCAA. So not a big deal in the long run. And Caden Proctor, that whole situation was just kind of funky. So I'm not surprised that there's something coming from that whole ordeal, just the way that he bounced from Bama to Iowa and then back to Bama. Like, that was just all very one of the stranger chapters, I think, in this early 2 or 3 years of the transfer portal. So, yeah, they're served their punishment, and he'll be out that first game. But beyond that, not any huge ramifications. Certainly interesting, though.
By the way, Jack just sent me that meme there of that. And
I didn't know how to better describe it because, again, I don't watch the show. But I didn't know the context. But I knew that it fit the Kirk Ferentz, like, hey, I'm using the transfer portal, and then, oops, and then just throw your computer away,
Yeah, the context was an episode where Ron found out that the government, like everybody else, is tracking us all the time.
Which they are.
Which he is very much not that way.
Yeah.
And so she had told him, like, hey, just put your name in here and hit enter. And then all the stuff came up and he just went through the computer away.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
That particular episode ends with him standing up holding a drone that he shot that was delivering a toy to his son without prompting. So
not a fan of the future.
Absolutely not. I actually think you would dig Parks and Rec if you ever got into it. It's one of those things. I think it's all up your alley.
I'll say what I'll put it on the list. Right, that long list that we all have, the shows that we say we're going to watch that we probably don't ever get around to. Maybe I will. Maybe if we have another. That would be like a pandemic part 2 watch. I think for me, you'd have to carve out like time where like I have to eat up some time here. What all can I fit in? I'd probably slide that in that instance. And who knows? Maybe I'll catch an episode and get a hankering to dive in. But I'm kind of booked up right now.
That's The Walking Dead for me.
Yeah,
I'll never get around to it.
Don't even start. It's not. It's just pointless. It just keeps going and going and going and going, and there's no real.
And there's like 11 spinoffs.
Yeah, there's just no real. I like things kind of tidier, which is weird because I cover college football, which is anything but tidy. I guess that's where I get my fill of the messiness, is all of the craziness of college football. But yeah, I like things to get like tied up and have direction, and I feel like that show, based on the people who watch it religiously, like about 5 years ago, it stopped having like a real clear direction, and it's sort of just it's like zombies at this point. It's just continuing on.
Yeah, absolutely. They've become what they feared.
Yeah, basically.
The most. All right, next up, Craig, I talked about this for the entirety of the triple option today. So I'll get into my opinion lightly, but if you want to know my full thoughts on this, you can go back and watch that because I did talk about it for about 45 straight minutes today. But Colorado and their special teams coordinator, Tyler Riley, parted ways a couple of weeks ago. And Sports Illustrated has obtained a letter, his resignation letter that he sent in. And part of that resignation letter was talking about what his NIL duties were, in addition to being special teams coordinator. And he had said he had gone out to hustle some money at certain places that Rick George and Deion Sanders let go because they didn't act on it. And one of those places was Saudi Arabia and the PIF, which is invested in Live Golf and trying to get in many, many other things, or not already in a lot of things. But he went there. We don't know the details of the meeting or whatever, but Colorado is not supplied money by the PIF as we stand right now. But this is interesting. This is the first college football foray we've seen legitimately into that, where somebody went and talked to them. Now, how Deion Sanders and Rick George feel about this overall, we don't know because they have not commented on it yet. Eventually they will have to, but your thoughts on the PIF potentially being interested in college football?
We've heard that term and that PIF term thrown around a bit this summer. And so I don't really, walk into this story completely just gobsmacked by, oh my God, what? Saudi Arabian college football? I mean, we talked about this right earlier this summer and the possibilities of them extending their tentacles into college sports and how that would work and what that would look like. And so I guess the surprising thing here is just that there's some guy who was like a rogue agent to go and try to get PIF money to impress Colorado and get a sweet job out of it. That's just he
was working there already, But
so basically, you probably think he was ordered to go do this, right?
I don't think he was necessarily ordered to do it, but did he pay for the trip to Saudi Arabia himself is the thing I'm wondering the most.
Well, I mean, in the letter that you're referring to, he says, I went to Saudi Arabia and I tried to hook up connections. Yeah. And basically he said he was promised a special teams coordinator deal and that he'd make like $100,000 a year and all that. And so I guess there was some cross lines of communication with Colorado and this guy over Riley over what was actually agreed upon, I suppose. But yeah, I need more details on this because the idea of just some wannabe, I guess long-term assistant coach, or I don't know what his grand desires were, but did he go to Saudi Arabia and start doing this on his own, or just the whole idea of taking the initiative, is something that you get complimented for and can work out really well for you in your career and in life. And so in some ways, it just sounds like he was taking the initiative, but it's one thing to I'm going to take over this chore and I'll do it, or I'll get up earlier in the morning. It's another thing to start talking with the Saudis about getting millions of dollars to pay the football team when you're just some dude on staff, basically. You're not Deion Sanders. That's the part that's just really strange to me of how did that even sort of get hooked up and the ball rolling? He says he went to Saudi Arabia. So how did all that get going? That's the part that's of most interest to me and the most confusing, because do they just accept any, hey, just call a number? It's Todd with Colorado football. I'm interested in getting some of y'all's money so we can pay recruits. We set up a meeting, or I don't know. That's the part I'm interested to hear more about. But yeah, very strange. And because it's Deion, that people probably heard the headline and just made up their minds right away on one side or the other. I don't know, man. This is just very bizarre. And I, again, don't think it's all that surprising that people are looking into more ways to make NIL money, but just some rogue staffer like Connor Stallion style going over to Saudi Arabia to hook up more NIL money is just something that confuses me and doesn't make a whole lot of sense without a few more details. So, yeah, Colorado seems to say this was his deal, and I don't know, man. I need to hear Deion's response to this and get a little bit more information on what exactly, was talked about and how all this was supposed to work, because it is very just sort of out of nowhere. Like the Kirk Ferentz thing is out of nowhere, but you're like, okay, yeah, sure, that happens. Like I could see it, especially the Caden Proctor thing. Like that was messy. It was a big time recruit bouncing around schools. You can see where there could be some tampering there. We're just surprised that anybody's got busted for tampering. That's what we're surprised by. Not that anybody's doing it. We're surprised that somebody actually got in trouble for it. This is a guy going over to Saudi Arabia, so it's way different and way more surprising just because it was not on my 2024 bingo card, if you will. So, yeah, what's your – I mean, you went 45 minutes on it. I went about 4 minutes. I don't have much more than that.
I just wanted to, like, put some clarity on the situation. And like I said, we don't know if Deion and Rick George had anything to do with this at all other than maybe – I mean, because he was working there. I mean, this is his resignation letter. But, so he, of his own accord, went and was trying to hustle NIL money. The thing I wonder is, were you so convinced that this was going to work out for you that you paid for your own trip to Saudi Arabia? Like that to me is strange. And look, who knows how you get hooked up.
That's what I mean is it's one thing if the PGA of America wants to go and meet with the Saudis, or if like the NFL, Roger Goodell, I know he knows who to call. I don't know. I never heard of this guy before today. And he's not like even a main position coach. No. So yeah, like that's what I'm talking like. The initiative's a hell of a thing. If like he just set this all up on his own and he went over to Saudi and he started talking with big brokers and possibly getting NIL money, then like more power to you, dude. Like I'm surprised you haven't gotten a raise. Instead, you're not on the staff anymore. So what the hell happened? And like how was that taken? Clearly not well.
In his letter, he says that they let it sit and let it go. So like he believes that there was an offer on the table from the Saudis that they let go, which I don't blame him. I did more of a larger look on the influence of like this kind of chase for private equity. And if this is really a thing with the Saudis, I think that we need to look a little deeper, much like with Live Golf. But like, let's not pin this on Deion. Like everybody sees big money Saudis and they think Deion Sanders, because he's a big money dude, and that he would automatically just be like, yep, don't care. Let's do it. I think my point was I wanted somebody out there like us to be able to say like, whoa. Deion's not going out and lunching with the Saudis trying to get money. This was someone who worked for him that did this. In what capacity, we don't know. Now, they have yet to comment, but they will eventually have to comment on it just to answer like, okay, look, this is how it happened. He did this. We didn't want it. And now he's not working here.
Yeah, so Colorado will speak at some point in time. I don't know if this turns into anything much more than just a sort of bizarre out-of-nowhere story today or if there's lingering effects from it. But, yeah, I mean, he had contact with boosters. Clearly, he was getting it all together, seemingly. And from his point of view, Colorado dropped the ball. And from Colorado's point of view, they moved on from him, right? Mm-hmm. So clearly they didn't see eye to eye on that. I don't know. Does that mean we commend Colorado because they turned down the Saudi money? Or, like, I don't know. Like, who – I guess we don't root for anybody. I don't have to root for anybody, I guess. But, yeah, I guess kudos to Colorado maybe for turning down the Saudi money or maybe they're just biding their time and they'll do that later. Regardless of this instance, I think that's a thing we're going to be talking about more and more. I just don't know to what extent, and I really hope it's not to a much larger extent. I know all of the conversations, I've come across a lot of them about why this is not a bad thing or why this is a terrible thing or, any opinion in between. I just like college football, man. I know it's changing. There's things that everybody's getting used to. I don't love the idea, though, of like the Saudi Arabians starting to live golf this thing. I really don't have any desire to see that, and not even if it gets Oklahoma 10 5-stars. There comes a point where it's like, let well enough be, and I don't think that this sport chasing Saudi money to be in this top tier and to be competitive year in, year out is really why I loved it to begin with. I know it's messy, but I don't know how I feel about that if that continues down that course. And so right now it's just a lot of talk, but if Florida State were to bite a big bullet and, take out like $500 million to get out of the ACC, then we're going to be inevitably talking about it again. And I guess kudos to this guy for his initiative, but I would love it if Colorado could find other ways to fundraise, and I guess they're deciding that they are going after different ways. So I guess props to them for that.
Yeah, we've got our first guest, Ben Peck, in about 10 minutes. So let's rattle through some of these. With the new scholarships and things available made in the House case, it does seem like it should be a good thing for most sports. But Ohio State has come out this week, and it's kind of thrown water on that a little bit, in that there will be some sports that start to act like club sports. There'll be some sports that get more. And I think the clarification here is that now there are more scholarships legally available, but each school has to decide if they want to do that or not. They have the discretion to fund scholarships to the level that is now available. So this is something we've talked about a lot in the expansion of conferences and how things change and where money goes and all of that, that some of the lower rung sports are going to get pushed off into the club sports realm. And the House case, while it could be good news for athletes in one regard, there's a lot of athletes who will not benefit from it at all and will be kind of punished for it tangentially, because their sports will no longer be funded at the level at schools like Ohio State.
Yeah, I think this is one of those fears that people have had when it comes to just the landscape shifting and where the money's going and what that's all going to mean in the future. We just came off of a pretty great Olympics for the United States, and there was a lot of terrific college athletes who made up a lot of those gold medals and a lot of the silvers and bronzes and just the big moments as well. So I do think that's something that you need to be mindful of if you're the college sports community. I don't know if this is as much of a, all these things are now going to go to the wayside and programs are going to die and all of that. I don't think that'll be the case across the board, but I do think there's no way all of this stuff could be shifting the way that it is. There's not going to be some collateral damage. Mm-hmm. And so if that's like the Montana volleyball program or something like that, then I don't think that'll come as a surprise at this stage. But it's certainly unfortunate that there might be less opportunities. I don't know, though. Has anybody figured out the Title IX component to this yet? Because that's not something that's just like, all right, no, you have to worry about this anymore. I mean,
no,
that's
they'll
not the
always
case.
have to. But
so
basically, you just have to. I mean, they'll get a very look. This is what happens with Title IX, is that schools get. And hopefully they've stopped doing it this way, because this is what led to their inability to deal with sexual assaults on campus. Is they give them a list and go, do these 10 things and you're Title IX compliant. And then they have somebody that goes through and goes, check, 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 check. And then once they've done those 10 things, they're technically compliant, but not. That doesn't mean that it's right or good or functional. They're just compliant by the rules. So they'll do whatever checklist that is and then move on and then wait for the backlash again.
Yeah, and I'm sure Ohio State doesn't care all that much about it because they're big enough to let it, bounce off or to be able to defend it. And so I guess we'll see what the actual fallout from this is, not so much the warning shot or just the first headline of this could happen. I guess when something does happen, that will be obviously far more notable. But yeah, there's been a great concern about programs going to the wayside. Now, does every program need 30 other programs? Is there maybe a bit overkill, that there's some fat that needs to be trimmed? Probably. I do think it's unfortunate that there's probably going to be less opportunities. I also know, though, that hey, if one or two sports are bringing in all the money and you just simply don't want to float a 10th and 11th program that's not bringing in money, you can see also where, schools and departments are coming from. But, yeah, I look at it from the Olympic standpoint. I just hope it doesn't ruin that system, because that is our amateur sports system. And obviously it's been very successful for us here in America. So I'm sure there's going to be less opportunities in some cases in certain places. But, yeah, I hope there's a way where we're able to maintain the status quo for the most part. You just might not have a D3 school of gymnastics or something. You know what I mean? Maybe it's not as bad as the headline appears to be about cutting sports. But we are talking about Ohio State, so Ohio State cutting sports is not, insignificant, and those are pretty big opportunities that are going to the wayside. But I also think this is a place that we kind of knew we were headed when all this started with NIL, and that something was going to have to give when all the money is going to be concentrated on basically 2 to 3 sports, football and the 2 basketballs. And so beyond that, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a harder time for programs in certain places. And yeah, there's going to be some collateral damage, which is unfortunate. But again, we knew that we were going to arrive at this place. We just don't know yet to what extent it's going to be, how bloody it's going to get, so to speak, on what all gets cut, where it gets cut, and how much that adds up to in the end.
All right. It's finally happened, everybody. All of our hopes and dreams have come true. General Booty has now been named a starter at a college program. He's the starter at ULM. So his journey to being a starting quarterback finally has become a reality, and he's the starting quarterback at ULM.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, my thoughts on, congratulations to him, the former Oklahoma quarterback. But, man, I'm sure he probably got made fun of a little bit growing up, made fun of even now for the name. But we've talked about him like 100 times over the last 2 years just because his name's funny, and for really no other reason than that. Maybe a little bit of football sprinkled in. But, he's got a funny name, and he'd be on the all-names team, and good for him on getting the starting quarterback job at ULM. Obviously, I know him. I don't want to say I know him, but I know his background a little bit because he played at TJC, which is where I'm from, back in East Texas. So I heard a lot of good things about him, and a lot of people who were very excited when he first arrived at Oklahoma. But that's just, that wasn't Jackson Arnold and Dylan Gabriel. Like, there just wasn't room for him to be the starting quarterback. So go on, young man, and do your thing and go make your NIL money and sell. I don't know how many T-shirts he ended up selling last year, but go put up some big stats and some big T-shirt sales and have a season, man. Good luck to you. But, he's got a lot of mileage out of just having that name for certain. But now he's getting some attention because he's the starting quarterback, and hope he tears it up.
All right, Texas has got a transfer running back that was previously at SMU and Kansas, which, there are still people in the transfer portal, and you can go get them. So
which I learned. I didn't realize you could do. I know there are dudes just still sitting there. You could go pluck a week before the season started.
I kind of thought there would be like some sort of avenue for that, but I didn't realize, how it worked. So, Velton Gardner. So he's there and adds depth to a position that has been ravaged by injuries in the last 2 weeks. So I wouldn't expect to see a whole lot of Velton Gardner, but at least they've got some depth there now.
Yeah, I did see, like when every school picks up a recruit, it's like, boom. It's like 2-star tackle from, whatever, boom. That's kind of how that felt. I saw like a reaction. It was just somebody random. Like, it might have been a 10-year-old kid for all I know, so I don't want to like bag on it too much, but it was like massive pickup, and it's like, he's available the week before the season starts. But in terms of depth, they definitely needed somebody and needed a big, boost when it came to their numbers. So he provides that. He provides another body for a running back room that's been ravaged pretty good over the past couple of weeks. I don't know how much you expect him to play or to get carries or whatever, but they clearly needed some help. That's why they were out looking, and he's going to be able to provide that for them, and was at SMU previously, so familiar with the state of Texas. And what a story for that young man. I would love to know more about like where he was and what his plans were for this upcoming football season, because all of a sudden you're living a dream that like hundreds of thousands of kids who are probably better than you, quite frankly, did not get to live out. Maybe not. I'll take that back. Hundreds of thousands, maybe not, but thousands of kids who wanted a Texas offer but could never get that, right? And he's just like, I don't know what his situation is, but you weren't on a team with a week and a half to go in the season, and now you're on the Texas Longhorns. Like, that's a pretty crazy change in life that I don't know if you saw that coming if you were Velton Gardner, you just trusted yourself, or you're just lucky as hell. I don't know, but good for him, and good for Texas to find a running back to hopefully help out what's ailing them with all of the injuries, and we'll see how much he actually plays. But it made sense that they needed to go and find somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Just real quick, Colorado has released a statement to Front Office Sports on Trevor Riley's efforts to secure NIL funding from the PIF. They confirmed it was his decision, citing his own comments, and the school also pointed out he's no longer on staff. According to Trevor Riley himself, he acted on his own accord and is no longer an employee of the university. So there you go.
Yeah, and he went to Saudi, but he also went to Jordan, right? So he was jet setting, and I read a couple more quotes as we were kind of going through that, and it sounds like if you believe that Connor Stallions really had nothing to do with anything, which I know we all know that's BS. Yeah. Like, he totally was talking to Harbaugh or through somebody. Like, we know that. We know that. This does sound, when you read the quotes, though, like a dude who did like truly act on his own. And you know, the way that he talks about all of the money that he spent to travel and all of the Mormon goodwill that he used
used up.
Or that he used up all the, like he said it was like $1 trillion, you know, like in Mormon goodwill or whatever the exact quote was. It's just again a weird story sort of out of nowhere, and you wonder like what did Colorado know? But you can make a pretty strong case just based on his own words that this was this guy going out on his own and trying to make something happen, and you know, trying to I don't know, just be the guy leading the charge and getting their NIL right and probably getting rewarded for it. So yeah, it sounds like, hey, they paid him nearly $100,000 and he was doing special teams work and all that. I don't know what his grand aspirations were, but he's a go-getter.
Yeah.
That's what you can certainly see. You can put that on the resume. You got to put, you know, why'd you leave Colorado so abruptly? Well, I had to tell them after they wouldn't, you know, go along with my Saudi and Jordanian deals that I was no longer wanted, but somebody might find that attractive. You know, like you got ties in the Middle East. You can go do business for us. Yeah, that's a weird story. But so Colorado's just saying we had nothing to do with this, basically. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he did this on his own.
It sounds like that could be the case.
Yeah.
I mean, it does, based on his own words. So if that's what happened, then Colorado doesn't have anything to worry about. And I don't think they have anything to worry about in general because this isn't illegal, but it's weird.
But they also didn't take it. They're not.
Yeah, no. So they didn't have anything to worry about in general, but it's just a weird story.
Yeah. Then the headline is like Colorado football seeks Saudi NIL funding. It's kind of all over the place. Well, no, Trevor Riley did.
Yeah.
You know, like he was
Colorado,
working for them at the
the word
time.
assistant after Colorado.
Exactly. Absolutely. When we come back, Ben Peck from KAGS in College Station will join us. The Lone Star Showdown is now the name of the A&M Texas game. They had a joint press conference today. It's a brave new world where those two are doing joint press conferences. We'll talk about that and the new era of A&M and Texas and how, I mean, it's not going to be that different, but how different it is now, very corporatized in the SEC, as there's a sponsor for it as well. This is 365 Sports.
Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland at Allen Samuels in Waco. Choose between 2 or 3 rows and save $12,000 or take advantage of 0% financing. Looking for something smaller? Drive home a 2024 Jeep Compass Latitude 4x4 and save $9,760 or take 0% financing and get $3,000. Don't miss out during the Make This the Summer of Jeep event at Allen Samuels in Waco, where we deliver your next adventure. See dealer for details.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
ESPN's Adam Rittenberg coming up at 4 o'clock with us on a really amazing article that he and Chris Lowe did on the history of realignment, and it's got motion graphics. We'll put the link up in the chat. But Ben Peck joins us now, KAGS in College Station. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. So A&M and Texas have a joint press conference today, something that I don't know if the world ever thought it would see, to announce that Cotton is the sponsor of the Lone Star Shutdown, of the Showdown, and by Cotton we mean the actual plant and the farmers that do it. But
right.
What were your thoughts? You've been covering A&M for a little while. You've seen this kind of transition of Texas coming back into the rivalry and now being back in the not back in the league, but in the same league again. Do you feel like there's like a tonal shift in A&M and Texas now that it's kind of corporatized too?
I think that was probably inevitable. I think the big shift for me is just where these two teams stand on any given year in terms of kind of their program prestige and the built-in advantages, you might say, but really the chance for both of these teams to kind of be equally competitive as they play on an annual basis. When I moved to Texas, my first year in Texas was 2005, and obviously a pretty good year for the Longhorns. And, at that time growing up, I went to high school in the Houston area. A&M, in my mind, is an outsider. They felt a lot more like a Texas Tech, or even what today you might say a TCU, an SMU, or even Baylor after they had their RG3 moments, so sort of on par with some of those programs. And then Texas was, the school that had a lot of the, institutional advantages, and they still carry a lot of those. But now, having been in the SEC for a decade, I think A&M has really accelerated its brand to be pretty close to on par. I mean, obviously, those of us in College Station would argue exactly on par with where Texas is. I still think Texas, from an out-of-state perspective, is what you think of. If you think of, like, the big school in Texas, if you're not from here, that's where your mind goes. But I think A&M is quickly establishing itself as, it's almost shifting from more of a, if we think of Florida, for example, how Florida State, maybe, see how the wind's blowing any given year, any given 5-year stretch to see which program is on top. And I don't know that you can necessarily definitively say it's one or the other. I think that's maybe where the Texas A&M rivalry is trending, whereas, in the past it was more maybe Oklahoma State, Michigan State, maybe not quite to that extent, but I think there's a renewed sense of excitement and optimism for Aggies that, in this new paradigm where things are a lot more level, that A&M can, especially if you can start off with a good run against the Longhorns, you can really kind of maybe change that perception and kind of establish yourself as really one of the blue bloods in the sport as they've been yearning for so long.
What has been some of the reaction that you've been able to take in as far as the naming and all that came with today's announcement, the Lone Star Showdown sponsored by Cotton Holdings? I don't know. I think people expected an announcement of this sort, but just, I guess, kind of how has it gone over?
Yeah, I think the actual event today, I don't think there was too much in terms of the I think it was just sort of the spectacle of seeing the two schools together. Yeah. I haven't seen anything too intense on the actual corporate sponsorship. I didn't even remember that. Apparently, someone dug it up that it was the State Farm Lone Star Showdown, I guess, right before it went away. I never even remembered it being a sponsored thing growing up. But again, I didn't grow up with the rivalry necessarily. But, my guess was going to be, if it wasn't going to be a sponsorship, I was kind of hoping we were going to get a trophy. That didn't come to pass. I was a little disappointed with that. But I think really just it was interesting to see, obviously, like I said, the two programs together. And then there were a few interesting nuggets that came out. Both schools kind of reiterated that they do want this to be happening on an annual basis. I know there's some speculation that if Texas is able to protect really one rivalry, so to speak, they would, definitely protect the Oklahoma rivalry, and A&M, they can take it or leave it, whereas A&M would really want to hold on to the Texas rivalry on an annual basis. But apparently both schools are really determined to make this happen on an annual basis. So I thought that was interesting. And then they are potentially hoping to move this to Black Friday as an annual tradition. So we'll see. Those were kind of the big headlines in my mind.
Yeah, Ben, I would think that the SEC would be pretty stupid to leave it to one protected rivalry for each team, because especially the old guard teams have more than one rival. I mean, that's how it works. So most of them have 2 or 3 protected games in that kind of a schedule. So is that like a legit fear that they may not play this game every year? Because that would be very dumb.
I don't think so. I think the only fear you run into is potentially if there were to be more expansion and crazy realignment, and, the SEC wanted to make sure it didn't have a situation like A&M and Georgia. Georgia has never played in College Station, and I think A&M has only played once at Kentucky. So obviously, getting away with the divisions helps get teams around a little more. But if the league were to expand to 18-20, it may say, hey, in order for us to kind of guarantee that you see everyone within a 4-year period, we can only really protect one rivalry for each of you. That would maybe be the only, I guess, scenario. But, yeah, I think under the current structure, 16 teams, I think there's pretty sizable optimism there.
So
let go of that.
Sorry, you cut out for a second. I thought you had stopped. That's my bad. Did I see correctly that Trev Alberts also said that this is going to be a part of, like, basically, I don't think there's an official name yet. I guess it'll be the Lone Star Showdown Cup, but that they're going to have like a reward, a trophy for the school that I guess does the best in all sports by the end of the year, almost like its own Sears Cup, if you will. That's very interesting, especially given Texas' prolific nature in a lot of the Olympic type sports. I don't know how fair of a matchup that is for the Aggies, but that seems like another neat quirk that comes along with the renewal of this rivalry.
Yeah, I did see something about that, and they even mentioned, the first. They kind of framed it as like the first part of the Lone Star Showdown is going to be September 27th, I think. Volleyball comes to College Station. So I wasn't actually in Houston today because I had some other stuff going on, but I did see some talk about that. But look, I think, the fascinating thing for me with the rivalry as it relates to the other sports, I've always thought, as someone who's kind of really, I've been here for a little more than 2 years now, really immersing myself into this. My sister's a Longhorn, so it's not like I'm totally devoid of everything going on in Austin. But I always think if I'm an Aggie, there's no sport that we should say Texas is allowed to have the upper hand or it's just conceded to Texas as well. Texas is always going to be better at us in this. Like I think if you're an Aggie, and I think Trev Alberts strikes me as this kind of guy, A&M athletic director, that like I would almost say, whatever they're able to do in any sport, A&M should be able to at least match, if not do better. And we've seen it with baseball. I think softball is coming up for A&M, getting a lot closer to where the Longhorns are. Obviously, they still got work to do with some of these other sports, volleyball and soccer and such. But tennis and golf, A&M's kind of had their number a little bit. So I do think it is pretty striking, the strength of both programs. I also think both programs should be able, if you just get the best recruits in Texas for your given sport and you get a handful of them, you should be able to almost build a national championship contender in every sport these two schools sponsors, with the exception of maybe men's basketball. You do kind of have to go out of state for that. So I think that is a fascinating dynamic that both of these schools hold themselves to such a high standard. They both finished in the top 6 of the Learfield Directors Cup this past academic calendar. And I think A&M is still, I mean, obviously A&M football is still ways away from there. That gap could tighten even more. And, I think it's, especially with the new NIL resources at their disposal going forward, I think both these schools in all the sports are going to have some fascinating matchups.
Ben, outside of the first football matchup, is the first baseball matchup the most anticipated part of this Lone Star Showdown?
Outside of football, it's got to be. I think it's kind of a shame that they're not coming to College Station. I guess they can't play every one of these games at College Station the first time, but I was in Omaha for when all that happened and the day after. And actually, if people want to go look it up, I had the unfortune of having a flight out of Omaha the day all that broke, and that flight got delayed like 23 hours. And I was with a lot of Aggies who are kind of just like me in the airport, trying to get home from the College World Series. You see your coach leave, and then you get stranded for like 24 hours. It's just misery. And a lot of anger, obviously, at the time. I did think that was interesting watching today. Chris Del Conte kind of in the same premises as Trev Alberts after all that went down. Really the first time aside from maybe SEC meetings. But, it's got to be. And a point that I always forget to bring up with baseball, for A&M, not that social media followers are everything, but I think it's a decent gauge. If you look, baseball is by far the second most popular sport on campus at A&M. I think even softball is number 3 above men's basketball. It's not to take anything away from men's basketball, but that is to say A&M takes a lot of pride in that baseball team. And obviously, being at the high point of where they've ever been as a program, a lot of animosity going into this first series. And, man, I can't wait. I think it'll still be electric in Austin. But, when they come back to College Station next year especially, man, that's going to be – if you think it's supply and demand, a lot fewer seats in the ballpark, you might even be able to get higher ticket prices for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, thank you so much, man, for hopping on. We appreciate it. We'll talk again soon.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate you guys.
That's Ben Peck at KAGS in College Station on now the new corporate version of A&M and Texas, which, I know is inevitable, but I think the thing that I guess growing up with the rivalry, it felt like it was kind of outside of all that. Or if it was, I don't know. Maybe I'm naive on that.
I just don't. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah.
They had a name before, they have a name again. It's just that they made it official and that they're able to promote the fact that Cotton's the sponsor. That's cool. That's great. I really don't think in the big scheme it's that big of a deal. Yeah. Just like if Tostitos is the sponsor of the Fiesta Bowl or they're not, it's a thing you mention and then you move on from it.
Yeah.
Because honestly, the story today isn't about the naming of that game. It's about the other stuff that was said.
Yeah.
It's not about we're not talking about Cotton. We're talking about the joke about Chris Del Conte saying that it was going to be a neutral site game and people going, wait, what? And then him clearly joking or making it clear that he was joking. But apparently based on a lot of the reactions there, you could have heard a pin drop because people were not expecting him to say that. So that was a funny moment from that. But I think the bigger news is that, apparently they're going to have a all-sports cup, basically, between the two schools, a Lone Star Showdown, not just in football, but across all sports, and, have a trophy at the end of the year. And I think that's the most interesting thing out of this. I think he's also about to get baptized because I don't think he understands anywhere close to what this rivalry really is based on respectfully what he said, but he hasn't been able to see it. And clearly he missed the boat earlier when he arrived in Texas and has not got that full feel of, I don't think he quite understands it, Paul.
No.
I don't think he does. And so he's about to find out this year, and I mean that in a great way, because he's about to understand that, it is Michigan, Ohio State-ish. It's Oklahoma, Texas-ish. Now, you can say those others are bigger or better or whatever, but it's not real far behind. And I think the fact that it hasn't been played regularly, especially these first couple years, it's going to be insane. The build-up, especially if one or both of them are actually pretty good, which I think both are expected to be pretty good this year. So, that part of it, the cup, I don't know how wise that is for A&M. I don't know that they have the sports to compete on a yearly basis and win that thing all that regularly. I know in track, that's one thing, but Texas is pretty good in track. And then Texas is pretty good in like a lot of stuff that I don't know how good A&M is, in a lot of the Olympic sports in particular. So
look, they've got Fred Curley, so
they've had their fair share of Olympic athletes. I think of Texas and like they're winning, like, when you hear like all the Big 12 totals, it wasn't football necessarily. It was like swimming and diving and in sports like that. Now I know A&M's competitive in some of those types of sports as well, but I did see most of the reaction originally of like, when are they planning on winning that thing? How will that go? But I think it's another interesting layer to make the other sports that much more interesting. And now a baseball game that was just, their baseball atmospheres are going to be great anyways. But now if you add an extra layer of the winner of this final game in the series wins the Lone Star Showdown Cup or something or whatever it's going to be called, like that puts that much more mustard on it. So I could see where that's, just another layer, like I said, of just competition and excitement and something to play for. That's a physical form of bragging rights that school can hang on to for a year. But, yeah, I just don't know how often A&M's going to win that thing based on UT's success in so many sports.
Yeah, history. Look, I know that there was a recruit who went and, like, took a picture with the trophy case and made fun of them at Texas. He's
I remember
He's
that.
like, I don't see any football trophies here. Or, there's only one football trophy from when I've been alive, kind of a thing. And it's like swimming, diving. But
that was John Tate Cook, actually, who's
and
at
he's
Texas.
there. Yeah.
So it didn't matter that much, did it?
Yeah, no, it didn't. It didn't matter. And so, yeah, that's all well and good. But the fact that A&M is close in a lot of those things.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to make it sound like it's not possible.
But the thing is that, close is not equal, right? So, look, if this motivates them to get better in those things, then so be it. Look, I wish FSU and Florida would do the same thing. They're not in the same conference. They do play each other in almost everything. Literally almost everything. They play in basketball every year, no matter what, both men's and women's. They're going to play in baseball every year. They played 2 series in baseball this year, home and home. Florida never beat FSU. I just want to throw that out there. But they do that. I wish that they had a similar thing. I wish that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State would do the Bedlam Cup, but that's that's dead.
I was thinking about them as well because that is, for all intents and purposes, dead. And I don't know what meetings in outside football sports they might have still on the horizon, but yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that at all. An in-state battle for supremacy and bragging rights, and actually, interesting concept. Have it settled on the field and not via NIL rankings or, any other number of things that people use to brag about. Like, hey, we played you in 19 sports and we won the majority of those 19 sports. That's a worthy trophy, man. And yeah, that's going to be a cool yearly thing for them to fight over. And they already had plenty to fight over in general. But it says let's see, both institutions reunited, SEC, blah, blah, blah. The year-long scoring system comprised of the results of up to 19 sports. So I don't know what the particulars will be there. To determine which school wins the annual Lone Star Showdown, a rivalry series trophy, and bragging rights for an entire year. And those sports in which there is no head-to-head rivalry series points will be awarded based on which team finishes higher in the final standings of their respective conference championships. So if they don't play in soccer or something, I guess just whoever finishes higher gets the points for soccer. And the first matchup will be in volleyball on September 27th. So there you go. And then the big football game on November the 30th. So, yeah, I like that. Cotton's a very fitting sponsor. That's about as Texas as you can get, I think, as far as just a big, straight to the point, like, encompasses both schools and history and all that. Like, yeah, the Cotton Lone Star Showdown makes sense. And I look forward to how this series plays out because that's another interesting wrinkle to bringing this all back.
I'm thrilled.
And the Black Friday thing, I think that's a good move too. If they go that direction, I think that makes a hell of a lot of sense for obvious reasons. So yeah, let's hope that that's in the cards as well. I think that makes sense.
Well, if you're going to try to take on the NFL on Black Friday, you need, like, college football as a whole needs. I do wonder. Big dogs.
Yeah, they do, and I think a lot of that will be about how good both teams are at that point as far as interest outside the state of Texas. I am curious about how many people care about this game outside the state of Texas. I know a lot of people inside the state care about it deeply, and there's plenty of transplants and plenty of people who aren't from Texas and went to both schools or have a dog in the fight that will be interested. But nationally, I don't know how much it registers compared to, and maybe that's kind of where he's come from, and trying to find a way to compare it to a Michigan or Ohio State or rivalries like that. I think it's got as much bad blood and hatred, but nationally, it's going to probably have some work to do to, boost its national interest levels. But that's easily solved by both being like top 10 teams and then having a lot of ish riding on the line when that game rolls around.
Here's the problem for that rivalry is neither of those two teams have been elite at the same time. Like when A&M made their best run against the Longhorns in the late 80s and early 90s with Jackie Sherrill and R.C. Slocum, it was kind of a downtime for Texas, right? And even then, A&M wasn't really contending for national titles because of the way pre-Big 12 that the Southwest Conference was viewed. And then after the first couple years of the Big 12, when Texas reestablished themselves, A&M was never really in contention for the Big 12 title. And the reason that Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, some of those big rivalries like USC, Notre Dame, get so big and people watch them is that throughout history, that game has determined a team that's going to play for the national title. It's never once determined that either one of the teams will. Both of them are in contention for it at the same time, much like Texas, Oklahoma, that's played, a month and a half before it every year traditionally. That one is always this is going to affect the national title picture, for both teams, as opposed to, at best, for A&M and Texas, this affects the national title picture for one of those teams. And so that's why it's probably never gotten as big as some of the other ones, because never once has it been, the loser of this game's out of the national title race and the winner's still in it and probably locks it up, like Michigan and Ohio State is almost all the time, right? And throughout their history, it's so huge. It's just not been that. It's huge for people here, and I think that by trying to promote it more people outside the state will see it. But both, A&M has to live up to their part of the bargain on that. That's what they have to do, is be a legit playoff contending team, and this game have playoff implications, not just for Texas. That's what's going to make it bigger, and not just a big rivalry. The old Oak and Bucket kind of a thing, which is cool, but again, it's not ever reshaped the national race the same way two top 10 teams now playing on Black Friday would, right before the conference title game. When we come back, Adam Rittenberg of ESPN wrote a fantastic column on the history of realignment. We'll have him, and then after that, we'll get to what we didn't get to in the rundown, including some very mundane news about Florida State and the ACC. Mundane news.
I mean, they're in the Big 12 now, right?
Yeah.
No, not quite. No,
mundane.
I mean, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. There's something to talk about there. If not, maybe spiral off into a couple of other things. But yeah, we'll get to that. But I know that Adam and company put together a pretty cool project based on all the reactions to it. So yeah.
Let's go. We'll get Adam next. This is 365 Sports.
It's time to score big savings at the Kickoff to Savings event on GMC trucks at Richard Carr GMC. Take the winning drive with the Texas Truck MVP. GMC Sierra is the best truck on the road. Save $9,000 on 2024 GMC Sierra SLT models in stock with approved trade-in. Plus, qualified buyers get 1.9% financing and no payments for 90 days. See dealer for details. Save big and score your deal at the Kickoff to Savings event at Richard Carr GMC.
Richard Carr, they have the truck for you.
Edward Jones Financial Advisors Josh Satterfield and John Maddox understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? When you invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Josh Satterfield, John Maddox, and Sean Carter, they will provide their time and experience to help you reach your goals. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Josh Satterfield and Sean Carter on Wycon Road off Bagby, and John Maddox on Sapphire Boulevard in Hewitt. Proud sponsors of Midway Panthers football. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Membership SIPC.
Elko Conquistador restaurants are a very proud sponsor of the Midway Panthers, have been owned and operated by the Gonzalez family since 1969. El Conquistador is recognized annually as a local favorite with their fast and friendly service. Dine in or order takeout and enjoy your favorite Tex-Mex items as well as several traditional menu items. Catering is also available with 3 locations to serve you: Waco, Belmead, and Hillsboro. The Gonzalez family thanks you in Waco and the surrounding area for your continued support of 55 years in business. Go Panthers!
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Containing only 95 calories and 2.6 carbs.
Welcome back, Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com joins us now, and Adam and Chris Lowe did a fantastic piece on the website. You can see it right now. We'll put the link in the chat. And Adam, I consider myself a pretty attentive reader, but the motion graphics that you guys did and how fascinated I was by that had me having to click back through a little bit, because this was, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this on ESPN's website really at all. And that's not to say that maybe they haven't done it, I just might have missed it. But this was pretty labor intensive for you guys and the site, wasn't it?
It was, and certainly appreciate the kind words. Yeah, we have a great creative team that does some of these special projects with outside designers, and it's one of those things that we had to do our reporting, Chris and I, really early. Back around, honestly, in May and June to get everything ready for this rollout yesterday. So it was a longer process, and we certainly appreciate, the editors and the designers for the work that they put in and to really bring this to life, because it's a very cool presentation. And I've been involved with a few of these, and we do these for all sports, but we've done a few in college football that, really are able to tell stories in different ways. And we're able to incorporate obviously some quotes and video and reporting, but it's obviously presented in a really unique way. So I know it went over really well, and certainly appreciate you guys mentioning it.
Adam, I think a lot of the events in the past, the Supreme Court ruling in 1984 with Oklahoma, that was obviously when Georgia, that's led us to where we are in so many ways. A lot of different things along the pathway. How much do you feel like there are probably younger people who see the chaos of the last 5 to 10 years or even the last couple that don't realize, hey, realignment's been around for quite a while, actually, and this helps illustrate that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And, certainly the last 3 summers have felt like, and it really have been historic. But, it's not the first time that conferences have changed dramatically, or that rivalries have gone away, or that a lot of emotions have gotten involved. I mean, this is the story of college sports. And, from the Southwest Conference going away to, the ACC changing to, some of the moves that were, I think, triggered by, Notre Dame, figuring out its own media contract and Penn State coming to the Big Ten. There's kind of these pockets where there was a lot of activity, and we're obviously coming out of one or maybe still in one, that obviously started with the Texas and Oklahoma moves from the Big 12 to the SEC. And so, yeah, I think it's just to show that, hey, realignment goes back a long ways and has been presented in different forms. And there's different factors that have fueled why teams have moved from one conference to another. And it's something that, will probably continue in some form here going forward here in the near future.
Adam, what was the most, like, as you dove into the history deeper? I mean, some things like Sewanee used to be in the SEC and things like that, but as you started to dive deeper into it, what was a historical fact that kind of jumped out at you?
Right. Well, I know the Big Ten history pretty well, so none of that really. I mean, obviously, Michigan having to leave the Big Ten briefly is kind of shocking. That's more than 100 years ago. I think how the ACC formed, and some of the friction between what's now the SEC and the current ACC and certain teams that were brought over and certain teams that were left out. I mean, the one section in there where a team from Virginia, whether it was Virginia Tech or West Virginia, was going to go into the ACC, and Virginia ended up being the pick instead of the others. It's just interesting to think about. Because there's factors that have changed, and right now, would Vanderbilt be in the SEC? Would Northwestern or Purdue be in the Big Ten? Probably not, if it's just based completely on brand and fan base and those factors, historical success. But that's not how these conferences started, and so it's always fun as somebody who enjoys history to look back at things that happened 50, 70, maybe even longer years ago.
Yeah, I love the quote that I saw about Notre Dame, and that, Notre Dame can't really complain about anything in realignment. Now, they sit pretty, as we all know, Adam. They're like the belle of the ball in realignment, hypotheticals or whatever. But I like the quote about them lighting the fuse. There was that Oklahoma-Georgia ruling, but then Notre Dame and that TV money there in the late 80s, that's basically the start of where we ended up to where we are now, right?
No doubt. And again, the Penn State move to the Big Ten was right around the same time. And then you had the SEC adding, a couple of teams to create a championship game, which is obviously really important to Roy Kramer. And that's been an incredibly successful event here over the years for the SEC. And we had Commissioner Kramer on video, which is really cool. Chris Lowe went out to his home and interviewed him. And, we had a video of Barry Alvarez and Kirk Ferentz talking about some of the Big Ten editions, and I spoke with Jim Delaney, who, again, had such a big role for such a long time and could really speak about not just what the Big Ten did, but what the SEC did and the courtship of Notre Dame, which never came to fruition for the Big Ten, but obviously worked out in a sense for the ACC, although not getting Notre Dame as a full member in football. So it's just fun to talk to those guys who were around for so long and involved in all of those meetings that really changed the history of the sport a few times.
When it comes to Notre Dame and the Big Ten, how far down the road did that really get? Because Notre Dame is very, very proud of their independence. And I don't know if anybody can ever give them a good enough reason to not be independent, given all the advantages that they have.
No, right. And Jim Delaney told me that those conversations weren't that serious. I think one time was a little bit more so than the other time. I think the second time they pursued them, it really didn't get very far because of what you just said. And, if Notre Dame can be independent and have access to compete for a national championship, then there's really no incentive on their part, even if they could earn more money as a member of the Big Ten or the SEC, there really isn't a driving force for them to do so. And I think what'll be really interesting, guys, is with the new playoff format, Notre Dame, the best that they can possibly do is to host a playoff game that first weekend as the 5 seed. They can't get into that quarterfinal round. And my view is that teams that will play on that first weekend, it's going to be very difficult for them to win a national championship. And so at what point does it become, hey, we're excited to host playoff games most years, but we can never win a national championship here? Because that was the goal and still is the goal. I remember talking with Brian Kelly about that for years, that's the only goal at Notre Dame is to win national championships. But as long as they have access to the playoff, and they will, and especially now that it's a bigger playoff, I don't think there's going to be much motivation for them to join the conference unless they feel that, hey, we can't schedule who we need to, and we're really not positioning ourselves ever to win a national championship. And if that becomes overwhelming, maybe they will finally agree to join the conference, and certainly the Big Ten would be the one that makes the most sense.
Is when you see some of the leagues that have broken up or kind of come and gone and morphed into something that they're not, obviously the Pac-12, and this is not just recency bias, probably has the most egregious ignorance on their actual situation than most. But when you look at some of the teams, and you guys talked about, how the Big East, popped up and started to be a player, and then they fell apart football-wise as well. Is that similar just historically when you look at the facts of the Pac-12, or how is it a little bit different?
I mean, I'm going to be biased here because I grew up in Pac-12 country, and that was my introduction to college football. The Pac-12 should never have broken up. I know that people say, well, California, they're not as interested in college sports. I just don't buy that. I mean, I grew up going to games in that state. I remember what it was like in the 90s and the early 2000s, especially with USC became so dominant. And just the arrogance and the mismanagement. I know that people give Larry Scott a lot of grief, and it's justified, but the presidents and chancellors of that league completely dropped the ball for such a long time. And, I think if you look at how the Pac-12 functioned for many years, and you looked at some of the discord in the Big 12, you would have put all your money on the Big 12 falling apart before the Pac-12. And it just underscores again how disastrous of a leadership job the commissioner, the presidents, and the chancellors and others who were influencers in that league did to let it get to the point where it reached, obviously, the last couple of summers. So just as a Pac-12 guy growing up, it's heartbreaking and it's really sad to see, but there's a reason for it, and there's a lot of blame to go around.
You've got a trio of quotes there at the end of the article. One's from Kyle Whittingham, Utah head coach. One's from Iowa State AD Jamie Pollard, and one's from Trev Alberts, Texas A&M AD, just kind of talking about the future. Whittingham's been very outspoken about how he thinks like there's the super conferences are coming and this and that. And I don't know, I guess I'm just asking of like all the quotes you heard, and those three were particularly interesting. Does it feel like everybody's kind of on board with where this is headed, or was there something perhaps more interesting that was said about where people think this is headed that you gleaned from these discussions?
Well, I think a lot of people do expect there to be, some type of super conference, although I still am interested to see, when that happens and the discussions that occur with teams that won't make it, because, that's still where it's been difficult for presidents and chancellors to go to a member in their league and say, yeah, you're not going to be part of this because you don't have a big enough fan base and you're not going to bring enough brand power to our league, so you're out. And I think, again, there's obviously, as you guys know, teams in the existing Big 12 and in the ACC that should be part of a super league. So who's in and who's out? How does that form? Is it completely turned over to television? Is it completely turned over to a czar of college football? How does that happen? But I certainly understand the belief that many people have that it's headed in that direction. It's just a matter of how soon and how it gets done. It will certainly be something to watch for in the next few years.
Adam, I know that you've got to go and do another hit. Thank you so much. Real quick before we go, starting next week, you have to write about actual football. Do you guys think that you remember enough, considering you've had to do so much legal stuff, that you'll be able to get a column out?
No, I've already started, guys. I have a big piece up today on quarterbacks and what coaches think of the quarterbacks around the country. So that's the stuff I love doing. And, even though you got to do some of these other things that are part of it as well, I'm really looking forward to it, as I'm sure you guys are as well. Full week of college football next week, but we got a little bit of action this weekend as well.
Appreciate it, Adam. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you again.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Adam Rittenberg, ESPN, with us there. And it was, I'm a very attentive reader when I'm reading something, but the graphics kept distracting me. And I'm a little worried that I've regressed.
No, I think they look very cool.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't know where to begin with how you even put all that together. And so, yeah, kudos to the team of, graphic designers and whatnot over at ESPN for making that a really cool interactive tool. So if you haven't gone and checked it out, definitely worth going and just kind of perusing through and seeing the moving graphics and the moving map and how we've ended up to where there's 4 quote-unquote power conferences and going back 100-plus years to, again, a Michigan and what was their example early on in this of where didn't they leave the Big Ten?
They left. They were independent, and then they came back
for a few years, and then they came back. There's I don't know how much people are aware of that small of a note from 105 years ago, but I do think most are aware of the ruling in the 80s with Oklahoma and Georgia and the big lawsuit about being able to sell your own games and not being beholden to the I guess you say the conference to do all that for you. And that leads us to where we are now where, then Notre Dame goes to NBC Sports and they have their conversation there late 80s, early 90s that turns into what we're still talking about 30 years later is this independent Notre Dame with this massive TV deal that is theirs and theirs alone. And why or why not they'll ever join a conference because of that. But yeah, once the Oklahoma-Georgia decision happened, that opened up all the TV stuff in a different way than it had ever been unlocked before, and that's still very much a part of the fabric of where we are. And there's just various things. I mean, just the Pac-12, before it was the Pac-12, was a conference written by scandal that had to break up because there were so many scandals. There's just a lot of little interesting notes like that I think maybe we've glossed over in the course of realignment conversations, or maybe just some people aren't aware of because, hey, you're younger and maybe you haven't followed college football your whole life, or you don't read books about the history of it. And so this is a really easy and simple way to learn pretty much every big hit of realignment since college football's existed. I mean, going all the way back to the beginning and to where we are now with the Pac-12 and the ACC and the Big 12 and SEC and Big 10 and all these moves that have been made in the last 2 years amongst those various conferences. So, yeah, it's really interesting to see that map just sort of change with every scroll. But on those quotes that I mentioned, I mean, not much new in terms of those, but they're all kind of alluding to the same thing. And it was the Kyle Whittingham quote, everything is going to be predicated and set up on where's the most money. That's why you're going to see another round at least of change, and it's ultimately going to streamline into 1 or 2 super conferences. They'll govern themselves. That's happening. The self-governance, that's already happening. They'll break off from the NCAA. They'll have their own playoff, and that's just where it's heading. I don't think there's any way around that. So that's Kyle Whittingham, who has a bleaker outlook on the future, but we've heard him talk about the future before and his thoughts on the Super League. We've also heard Jamie Pollard, who's been on this show a couple of different times. Those that have all the gold make all the rules, right? So if I was a member of the Big Ten or SEC, I'd start looking over my shoulder and wondering, when is the day going to come when the top of the SEC is not going to want the bottom of the SEC? And I don't think we're anywhere close to that right now. But if you do believe in the Super League idea, like Kyle Whittingham clearly does, then yeah, there's that chance of sorry, South Carolina.
Well, look, the more you turn this over,
if you believe in that direction,
the more you turn this over to TV only understands
Right.
one thing, which is ratings.
Right.
And there have been many good shows canceled because they just didn't get ratings, and every one of you on this chat room has a show you loved that was loved by people that you know. It wasn't just you saying you like Ned and Stacy, which is a really big, deep callback, but you.
That sounded personal. Like you really still missed that show.
It's the first one that came to my head about a short-lived sitcom.
Yeah.
But a guy's going to sit in a room, and with his other TV people and go, well, we're not liking Purdue right now.
Yeah.
It's just not looking good. I mean, the numbers when you play this team are way better than when you play Purdue. So what can we do about getting Purdue's numbers up? And then they say, well, we'll try this. And then Purdue's numbers don't go up, and you're going to go, well, all right, we're really excited. We're really excited about Mississippi State now because they've made a jump in popularity.
Yeah.
And that's how it's going to be.
And I'm sure there will be the whole, well, yeah, Purdue has the Indianapolis market, that kind of, I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
And, all that. And so maybe they'll still have their spot. But I've maintained all along that when you talk Super League, anything short of culling the herd and the elite of the elite to me is not a Super League.
Yeah.
Just saying Big Ten SEC, it's a Super League. No, the F it's not. It's Super League is carving about 4 or 5 teams out of both of those leagues at the bottom and then putting the rest of it together and having a 32 team basically every team's won a national title in modern history. That's a super league to me. But there's different definitions. There's also different thoughts. There's people that don't think that's going to happen. But then you read a quote from like Trev Alberts. So we knew Jamie Pollard had said that before. He said that on this show. So that's what we're talking about there with the culling of the herd. And then Kyle Whittingham, like his whole doomsday approach on like, yeah, there's more change coming. Maybe not doomsday, but more of a darker, I guess, take, a more negative, I guess, take for people. He's been adamant about that for a while now, and he's only reinforced those thoughts. But this one from Trev Alberts, who is a guy in a position where they do have a spot at the table. And they are somebody who is probably in a super league, although I think there'd have to be conversations if it was Commissioner Craig Smoak, because, they bring a lot of money and they bring a lot of eyeballs. But if we're talking about, like, the accomplishments and things like that, I think they'd be one of those. It's, like, probably one of the last few that would get in. But regardless, Trev Alberts, A&M AD, we were able in the collegiate football space because of cable TV to essentially subsidize 130 FBS schools. There was money for everybody. The problem is, as we're transitioning to the streaming model, how do you bundle streaming? And at least from my perspective, there's always going to be significant dollars for live sporting events in college football, but how many people are going to get to be a part of that? How many schools in the different conferences? So, I mean, that sentiment's been out there, but that's just reinforcing that sentiment is going to be out there until we get to the end of the road and whatever that looks like, whether it's still 100-plus schools on various outlets or if it's more of a compact, streamlined, one league stands above the rest and everybody else is just sort of there. I don't know. That's the doomsday scenario, and we're not there yet, thank God, because I don't know how much that it's going to be great for most people.
By the way, Bracket Cat on the chat says, I'm already learning stuff from this graphic, Paul. Looks like the old SoCon set the conference membership record with 23 before the SEC split off. We're closer to that unwieldy level. Yeah,
there's the, South Carolina's got Florida State to thank for being in the SEC because FSU and Bobby Bowden decided it would be an easier path in the ACC, which was right because they won national titles. But now they're trying to, hey, wait a minute, like that was an old decision. And we want a new decision now. Bobby's not making the decisions any longer, and we're far more established. So can we reverse that or reclaim that invite maybe? But like there's that. I think most people probably aware of that. But if you're a South Carolina fan, like that's just luck, basically. There's the politicking over the Big 12 and which Texas schools are going to get in. There's been this long, urban legend that has some facts to it about Ann Richards basically putting Baylor in the Big 12 versus Houston or an SMU or TCU, who all got left out. TCU found their way in. Houston found their way in. SMU didn't get into the Big 12, but they found their way into the party as well in that time, although it took them 30 years to do that. But there's a lot of stuff like that, and there's some things early on in like the early 1900s. A couple things that I've learned just from looking at this in the last half hour or so. So it's pretty cool. I like it. I think they did a really good job with this.
And that was at the time when, A&M and Texas were tied at the hip because they were sharing a lot of things, and they had to. But if you remember the beginning of the Big 12. A&M kind of didn't want to do it. They wanted to go to the SEC then and thought they could have, which clearly they could have because it was, kind of open for business then. But, they always thought that was a smart move by Arkansas and that they could go and do that. But, that would have meant that Texas would have had to go to the Pac-12, which I don't think Texas ever really wanted to do. I think had they really wanted to, they would have.
I don't know. I don't know what the desires were at that point in time. I mean, if you wanted to do it, you would have done it. Seems like it would have been that easy for Texas, and they wouldn't have had to have. I mean, who knows? Maybe there was some political conversation going on that forbade that. I don't remember the history exactly bullet by bullet, but I mean, you feel like that's a school that can pretty much dictate what they want to do. So obviously there's reasons to not follow through with that. But there was that situation that came really close to happening. And if it does, then everything we've talked about for the last few years is drastically different because they're not in the Big 12. They're in the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is probably not hurting for a TV deal. Probably not taking years to try and get a TV deal done. We got Texas and Oklahoma and then probably Tech and Oklahoma State, whatever the combination was. I think that was the combination. Things are drastically different for a lot of different parties. Georgia Tech leaving the SEC and making that decision because they wanted to be the Notre Dame of the South. Well, they've done well for themselves, but that plan didn't go the way they thought it was going to. So that was something that helped aid, South Carolina getting to South Carolina leaving the ACC was another thing that led to Georgia Tech after leaving the SEC, get into the ACC eventually. So there's a lot of little movements like that have happened over time, and so really what's happened the last couple of years is just status quo. It's just been pretty colossal moves, which is what's made it a lot different. And the uncertainty beyond that and the fact that there's all right, now what's next after this, that's what I think makes this all feel, other than being very current, very different.
Sewanee now, who left the SEC as well, they're now the University of the South. That's how most people know them. And I'm sure there's some people at the University of the South, they're kicking themselves.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
But maybe Vanderbilt is, because I feel like Vanderbilt would be.
Tulane's is a little, has to be a little bit.
Vanderbilt is kicking themselves because I think Vanderbilt would be better than the University of the South. Of course, it would be a super heavy Tennessee conference if that was the case. But
it would.
Anyway, because that's where that is. When we come back, let's get to a couple of things. We don't have to do the Lone Star Showdown now, Garrett, because we covered that. But we didn't get to the Mac injury reports. We didn't get to a lot of things.
Patrick Mahomes.
No, I'm sorry. Brittany and Patrick Mahomes donation, because I'm sure she's a huge part of that.
Patrick and Brittany Mahomes. No, I don't want to quibble over it. Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's both of them, sure.
I mean, it is.
It is.
But it is. I don't know how much she did to get that money.
I don't know. Based on her social media live, I think she's making pretty good money. She's making more than everybody in this room combined. I guarantee you that much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of it, there's a comedian I saw recently, and she was talking about Mackenzie Bezos made a donation somewhere, and it said Mackenzie Bezos author, and she's like, let's not pretend.
Yeah, that is kind of that is
where you made that money.
The thing with Brittany though is she owns part of the soccer team up there, and huge social media star. It's just weird for me because I remember, I don't know if I ever met her, because bar nights, you just meet people. I may have come across her at one point in time. But I'm more of the parents.
Yeah.
I knew Pat Sr. and definitely hung out with him and knew his mom, and Patrick's mom and my mom were well acquainted and good friends. And so I've known the family when we used to hear about Patrick, we used to hear about Pat Mahomes' kids. Didn't know much about it other than that, but just everybody knew who Pat Mahomes was because he's the lone Major League Baseball player in the area.
Yeah.
And he was active during me growing up in the 90s. So we were well aware of Pat, and you started to hear, man, some point in time there, I guess when the boys were getting, into sports age, being able to play, you started hearing about Patrick Mahomes, the son of Pat Mahomes. You started to hear about him. Not so much Jackson, although Jackson was a pretty good athlete from what I recall. If you look, he's a tall kid. I think he played basketball, and I don't know what else. He was actually a pretty good athlete, but Patrick was the one that you always heard about him. Just wait, man, wait till this kid. But everybody thought he was going to play MLB because of his dad, and then it turned into what it turned into, and he's, maybe going to be the greatest football player of all time when all is said and done, which is just pretty wild to think of. Anyways, I mentioned that because Brittany was a very good athlete too. She was a soccer player at UT Tyler, so she's got quite the background herself. But yeah, we'll talk about that and a few other things.
Yeah, that's coming up next. This is 365 Sports.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody, the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Smokey is off today and tomorrow, but he'll be back on Monday, as we all will, to recap what is Florida State 42-10 win over Georgia Tech. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be that way. I think an Ireland game's going to be sloppy. It makes me nervous.
Yeah, I think Georgia Tech should be able to score more than 10 points. You would hope, with Haynes King coming back and a lot of his weapons coming back as well. But he could also have one of those games where he reverts to bad Haynes and throws like 3 picks, and they're a couple pick sixes and Florida State wins huge. Yeah, I'm just so freaking thankful that we finally got here, man. I've had a lot of fun talking about a lot of different things over the last few months. Been very interesting times in college sports, and we dabble in a little bit of pro stuff here and there as well. But I love the games, man. I love the pageantry. I love when we're not close to it yet, boys, but I think like today might be the last 100 day for a little while. If not, maybe the rest of the year, knock on wood. That'd be great. But as soon as we feel that crisp air for us in Texas, and probably about 3.5 months from now, I always look forward to that time of year when it finally starts to feel like football, when football's almost done. But just football being back is this the greatest thing. This is the best time of year, and I'm so thankful that we have results to talk about rather than projecting or guessing, or even though there's still going to be plenty of that, but just having the facts, man. Like now you can brag about what you've actually done, not what you did in the portal and not what trophy you won in the offseason and all of that, which is all valid and whatnot. But yeah, let's get this playoff underway. Let's get this new look SEC and Big Ten and Big 12 and ACC. Let's see what this looks like, man. We've talked about it so much. I can't wait to see how this season unfolds, because there's just, again, like I said at the very start of the show, we probably, I mean, barring some like super conference level shift, which some people believe in, some people don't, this is going to be the craziest upended type of season that's different from what we've been accustomed to that we're ever going to see in our lifetimes. Because anything that tops this is going to have to be so dramatic that the sport just doesn't look the same at all in a lot of ways. And it doesn't look the same in a lot of ways this year. Mm-hmm. So, I can't wait to see how it all starts to unfold this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so just a couple of things here. The MAC has become the latest conference to require injury reports, and they'll have to be submitted at least 3 hours before kickoff on game day. You're going to see this more and more. This should not, here's what's weird about this. This should really not be that interesting of a development, because professional sports are required to do this and have been for decades now. To do these things, but college sports haven't been, and it's because coaches like to keep secrets about things, and they like to pretend that you didn't watch tape of a guy spraining his ankle, and you might be fooled that he Willis Reed's his ass out there and plays tough, but it's always been kind of a silly thing to me that, look, is a guy going to play or he's not going to play? Why do you have to not? This is not.
Paul, you can cut to the chase. This is for gambling.
This is for gambling.
Yeah,
absolutely.
this is what
gambling.
This is for.
This is for gambling, for sure. And it takes out a lot of the insider information.
Right, is the
but
starting quarterback going to play or not? Yeah.
Yeah, those kind of things.
That's who this is for. This is not for us as regular just college football fan on a Saturday watching the game that you really needed to know whether Syracuse's Kyle McCord was going to play or not, because you were going to watch anyways. But if you're putting, a couple G's on Syracuse to cover the spread, you need to know if Kyle McCord's playing or not before you make that bet, right? So I think this is what that's for more than anything else, is the betting crowd. I'm all for it, though. If Kyle McCord's not going to play and we're talking about the game, I'd love to know that. Now, granted, you could have it right before kickoff, but I think transparency is good, and I do think there's a lot of funny business and just tactical mind games that coaches and teams have played over the years as far as availability. I know I've seen 20 examples of it just with the one school down the road, so everybody's got their own examples of it. And, I like that it's going to be a bit more on the up and up as far as less mind games and more of just knowing who's going to play. But, this is very much for the gambling crowd to know who's going to be on the field or not.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it. I'm not against it in any way, but I know that's the main reason for this. So I'm sure that'll be nationwide sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be. It has to be. I've always been irritated by coaches. It has nothing to do with gambling, because I don't gamble, and like you said, it's not for me and you. I've just always thought it's a stupid thing. It's just games of shit. They've made it more of a thing by being cagey about it, but given technology that we, especially now, the more technology we have, if you're not exchanging film, and having to meet halfway and do that, but since everybody has film on everyone now, everyone knows everything. So let's.
Yeah, but you don't know necessarily the guy who's got an ankle injury of how far along he is. Although I think at this point, schools find a way. They find somebody on staff that was at GA 10 years ago that knows a guy that knows a guy, and you're there's ways to find out. You're right. Or there's just message boards, coaches pouring over those to see the latest updates on who they're about to play and all that jazz. But this is for the gambling crowd, and I do think it's something we're going to see obviously continue to progress to where ultimately it's just the status quo across the board for every conference. That's clearly where we're headed, and that's good for the fans, whether you gamble or not, to just know who's playing come game time, and whether your quarterback or your receiver or whoever's going to be available, or the guy on the other side, if he's not available, that certainly maybe that piques your interest level. We got no shot today, and then you hear so and so's out. Maybe you tune into that game, although. I don't know how much this changes that from what it was, but for the gambling crowd, it certainly does to have that information clear and transparent.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm all for this. Garrett found this earlier, and Garrett, who's this from?
This is from CBS Sports.
From CBS Sports. This is asking college basketball coaches how much they've gotten asked for an NIL contract. And less than $1 million is 49%. Between $1 million and $2 million is 40%. And more than $2 million is 10%. Which this to me makes sense that like the more than $2 million would be a very small piece of the pie. That most of it is between $1 and $2 million or less than $1 million, because I would be pretty bold to be 19 years old and say, I would like $2 million, please.
I mean, yeah, at 19 you might be, but Uncle Reggie's not.
No, that's true.
Yeah. So that's the guy who's your handler or your, friend of the family, Michael, who's a sports agent or, whatever the situation is. I don't think it's always the players that are asking for that money or being prodded in a certain way to maybe ask for more than they were thinking of asking for. That's the part of it. I mean, we talk about the kids, they're not the ones demanding all these things. You realize that, right? The adults that they've hired to take a cut and help manage some of these operations for them, they're the ones that are probably demanding more than anybody. But, man, NIL is what it is. And so I think the half of the crowd asking for less than $1 million makes plenty of sense. I actually would think that number would be a lot higher, because that means that half of the players asked, or I guess half of the staff members that are asked have been asked about $1 million or more. So it's a lot of money, man. For that to make up 50% is that's the highest amount that somebody's asked for. Yeah, there's a lot of money flowing. People know it. There's sharks in the water, and if you're pretty good to, especially big time player, you're looking at the seven figures. I think nowadays, especially in basketball and football. So more than $2 million, though, yeah, you got to be pretty elite to go up and start asking for $2 million pretty much right out of the gates. That would be your top tier national player of the year type 5-star recruits. But it's interesting to see that that breakdown of how much money's flowing and what people are asking for.
Yep. All right, next up, Patrick and Brittany Mahomes have made a $5 million donation to Texas Tech Athletics, and I'm sure that every university is hoping that they have a Mahomes family in there, that they have a big-time athlete that's the pinnacle of their sport that will come and share some of the wealth with them. But Patrick he's a mogul now. Like, he really is. He's got a lot of things going on. But $5 million from the Mahomes family, Patrick and Brittany Mahomes, to Texas Tech, which should not be surprising. Some guys leave their college and then they come back, once in a while and wave on the field. Patrick's really put his money where his mouth is in supporting his alma mater.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who you don't really know how they are behind the scenes or in real life, and I think the best part about Patrick Mahomes is you don't ever have to worry about something going sideways or him embarrassing the university or embarrassing himself or his family. Jackson does that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. But no, he's a good dude, and not surprised at all to see him, supporting the things that he believes in or that Brittany believes in or that the family believes in. And he loves Texas Tech, man. That much is very clear if you follow him on social media. And he's been that way since he was at Tech. He and even in the immediate aftermath of him leaving, even before he blew up, which happened in 2 years. But he's always been very vocal and supportive of them, and so I'm not surprised at all to see him giving back. $5 million's a lot, but compared to all the advertisers and sponsors that he has and the contract that he has, that's probably a drop in the bucket for him, but that's significant, and it's a big deal because it helps complete the fundraising project that they were doing for all of their football improvements. Now $115 million raised for the South End Zone and Football Center project that we're going to start seeing this year. That's been completed, so they're almost done with that, and this helps them get over the top as far as the financial side of things. So who better to clean up and clear the bases than the biggest star in football and certainly the biggest star athlete that Texas Tech is probably ever going to see when all is said and done. I can't imagine how you could have a bigger star than Patrick Mahomes right now, much less what he's probably going to be another decade from now. So I think we'll hear plenty of him giving back to Texas Tech, and this is just another example of his love for the Red Raiders. And, man, that's going to be cool to see Patrick and Brittany Mahomes, or whatever it looks like on their portion of the football project that will have their name on it. I read that earlier. It'll be the walkthrough area in the Womble Football Center. So, yeah, if you're visiting as a recruit and you see Patrick Mahomes, I'm sure that's going to make you go, huh?
Yeah.
Although I'm sure you probably walk in and there's Patrick Mahomes, and you walk through the hallway and there's Patrick Mahomes. Like, I'm sure everywhere you look in that building, there's probably Patrick Mahomes something, because why wouldn't there be? But, yeah, that's cool, and you always love to see guys give back, especially when they've been so successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And last, and we have another thing to get to that we'll do at 5:30 now. John Machota's flight got canceled, so he's scrambling a little bit here. But Florida State and the ACC went to mediation, and nothing happened yet. And they continue mediation. So mundane realignment news for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing significant other than the expected when it comes to the mediation. That was something the judge had, requested or ordered, and so they went into it, and there's plenty of differing opinions on whether it was going to be taken seriously or not, right? Of, hey, are they actually going to go in there and bang this thing out and come out with an agreement, and, hey, Florida State gets out sooner as a result of that? That's the dream, of course, if you're an FSU fan or Clemson or UNC fan, but that was pretty unlikely. And then on the Florida State, or the anti-Florida State leaving crowd, you were hoping that there would be no agreement reached, because you don't want to see this get mediated. You want to see this drag out, and you want to see them be holding to that contract for as long as possible, right? And so I guess you got the win today. That crowd did, because, yeah, there's no agreement that has been reached, and so this thing continues on, and I expect that will be the case for quite a while. Nobody knows for sure, but certainly I wouldn't say that anything seems imminent with Florida State and any kind of movement right now, although maybe they'll hire the Colorado staffer, and he can use his Jordanian and Saudi Arabian connects to just, expedite this process of getting them enough of a nest egg to be able to leave. No, I think this was expected, and I guess meaningful in that, yeah, there's no magical mediation agreement that's going to pop up out of nowhere that helps, solve this thing sooner rather than later. So the beat goes on.
Yeah, this is going to take a minute. When we come back, Craig Smoak's Off the Radar. This is 365 Sports.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome back to the show. Man, that was quick.
Yeah, we're shortening them up a little bit.
Yeah. Here we are. Time for Off the Radar. Tuesdays, Thursdays at around 4:45, and just taking a look at a grab bag of stories from around the world of sports that otherwise we might not get to. But I guess let's start off with, how about a little bit of Hollywood news? Don't do much because there's not necessarily always a lot of sports crossover, but every once in a while there's a little bit of sports and Hollywood mixing together. And that includes that Travis Kelce, who's, only his quarterback's more popular than him, I think, from the NFL at this point. But he is going to have a cameo in Happy Gilmore 2, which I don't know if you knew that was on the horizon.
I saw Jimmy Fallon the other night, or I saw Adam Sandler.
Yeah, he was on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and made it known a couple of nights ago that Travis Kelce is going to be in Happy Gilmore 2 that will be coming out. That he was asked about the cameos. He said, we have a nice something for Travis. He's going to come by. He's a very nice guy. You guys would love him in real life. What a big, handsome guy. Funny and cool as hell. He's a stud, and he's so funny. So now Adam Sandler's falling for the guy. So he's got some kind of magic surrounding him right now. But apparently he's in talks to do some other Hollywood stuff as well, which I could totally buy that.
That's where it's headed. Look, you've got – I promise you, if he and Taylor stay together, you've got 2 more years of Travis before he –
Well, he just signed a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
So he just signed a 2-year, $34.25 million deal, highest paid tight end. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's got a chance to win a couple more Super Bowls with the Chiefs in these next couple of years. But, yeah, he's going to be in the Fox horror series Grotesquerie. Sounds like that'll be super long lasting. I hear Fox shows and I'm like, that's either going to last a year or it's going to last about 15 years. But he's going to be in the Fox series Grotesquerie. He's going to host Are You Smarter Than a Celebrity? And he's now going to be dabbling, potentially in movies, but for certain, he will be making an appearance in Happy Gilmore 2. So a sports movie, technically as well, although not maybe what pops to mind, right away, like a Rudy or something like that. But I definitely think Hollywood's very much in his future, and we're only seeing the start of this whole thing.
Look, I would rank Happy Gilmore right up there with Rudy.
You would? Okay.
It's as inspirational. No, I love Happy Gilmore. The original Happy Gilmore. I love Adam Sandler. Like, I get that not every movie he has is great. Like, he's having fun, and he's willing to take the risk that the movie's not that great. And if you don't like it, he doesn't care. He had fun making it, which I actually respect. I mean, he learned that from Burt Reynolds, who had the same thing. Was like, look, I'm going to make stuff that I want to make. I'm going to have fun doing it. If they don't like it, well, I'm going to make another movie that I like, and then eventually they will. So I appreciate that because it's really hard to make a movie and all of that. And so, no, I'm all for it. I hope that it's good, and I'm sure he'll be good in it. I wonder what golfers we're going to see in Happy Gilmore 2.
So. Ooh, will there be a Live versus PGA battle in Happy? Happy's leading the PGA against the evil Saudi Live golf team or something. I don't know how they'll incorporate that. But, I'm sure your guy Brooks will be in there somehow. And, all the usual suspects, all the big names, I'm sure they'll find a way to squeeze in a couple of those guys, if not a bunch of those guys. Like Rory will have some random line in there, some crack. Sandler's a huge sports fan, so
Lee Trevino was in the last one.
Yeah, they had cameos in the first one, so they'll definitely have some in this next one. But Travis Kelce is going to be a part of Happy Gilmore 2. Not sure to the extent of that role beyond just making an appearance, but that's still pretty cool for him. Meanwhile, one other Hollywood note. This is pro wrestling related, but the Hulk Hogan movie is no longer happening.
Oh,
they were doing a biopic.
Chris Hemsworth, right?
Biopic on Hulk Hogan was getting underway, and Chris Hemsworth, a.k.a. Thor, was going to be playing the Hulkster. And I actually saw some pictures from several months ago, and I guess he was already preparing for it. And, granted, he's jacked for Thor, but, he was, getting, it wasn't natural, the picture that I saw. So he was definitely getting that pro wrestling mindset, but he also had some, the Hulk's just a mess, man. He's just a messy dude. He had some controversial, racial comments the other night involving, I guess it was around the debates, and he said something about Kamala Harris that got controversial. I don't know. I don't follow it super closely. He's in the Ric Flair category for me, where I'm a wrestling fan. I appreciate your contributions. But like you as people, I just want nothing to do it just because like they're so pro wrestler messy and have been for like 25 years. So like Rick getting a DUI or being broke or the Hulkster getting into some scandal and being broke or like it just comes with the territory with those two. They're like the last of the old pro wrestlers, and they are just carny, baby, and they are. I mean, till the wheels fall off, they are just going to be those guys.
Carny is the best word for it.
Well, that's the word usually because that's wrestling. It's carny stuff. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, I think of, carnies at a carnival.
Well, that's what it is. That's where wrestling started. It was carnival.
Exactly.
So they're known as carnies.
Yeah. So, no, I buy that. I mean, winning a sex tape lawsuit was not something I ever saw.
Should have just stopped there.
Yeah.
Like, you had such a massive win. You put that company out of business. You got this massive amount of money. Granted, it came at the expense of,
You sullied the name of Bubba the Love Sponge.
Yeah. Oh, man. But, yeah, all that happened. And then, there's just, I don't know, just Hulk and Ric Flair are messy dudes who can't seem to stay out of the headlines every few years. But if you were looking forward to the Hulk Hogan biopic, I just wanted to mention that along with the Happy Gilmore 2 note that it has apparently been axed. So I'm not shedding a tear. I wasn't that interested to begin with, but it's now official that I'm not going to be seeing that movie.
UT Parking. Hulk Hogan missed a phone call that cost him the George Foreman grill. They partnered with George Foreman because Hulk missed the call.
Yeah, he also back when WCW first started doing their Monday Nitro to go against WWF, if you go back and look at that first episode, they did it in the Mall of America, and it was like right in the middle of the Mall of America, because Mall of America was like, I guess, brand new and like very cutting edge, and so it was unique to do it there. But also part of it was that he had opened up a Pastamania, which was the Foreman Grill. He didn't do that, which would have made him like hundreds of millions of dollars. He did Pastamania, brother. So he opened up like a pasta restaurant that wasn't like super high quality, and it did not last very long. You can probably go find the old commercials for it.
I wonder what it's in it now.
That's what Hulk did. He didn't do George Ford. He's one of those people. Everybody knows people like that where they make the wrong decision. It seems like he does that more often than not.
Smokey and I spent a week in the food court at the Mall of
that's
America.
where it was.
Radio. I wonder like, is it the Chipotle now or whatever?
Yeah.
The Qdoba. That's in there.
Hulk Hogan's Pastamania.
They bring people in and be like, you're starting here today, on the grill. This was once a Hulk Hogan's Pastamania.
Yeah. I don't think it lasted very long. I just know that was one of those business dealings that you look back on its history. You're like, I should have taken a left when you took a right. But George Foreman is certainly thankful for that. So there you go. No Hulk Hogan movie coming out. Couple of notes from the NFL. Bo Nix has been named the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos. This came out yesterday while we were on the air, but we didn't get around to anything NFL-ish that I can remember. So I held this one back to get your thoughts on the big decision from Sean Payton and the rookie from Oregon, now the starting quarterback of the Broncos, who try to move on post Russell Wilson and get this thing back on track.
Yeah, I love it.
By the way, beat out Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson for the QB1 job.
Yeah, I love it for Bo. Good for him. I loved watching Bo play last year. I loved Bo. He's got some moxie to him. And we'll see.
A lot of people don't believe in him, though. He's a guy who's very, very much got a crowd that's like pro Bo Nix and a crowd that doesn't think he's that great.
It's because he was lackluster at Auburn.
Yes, that's very much where it all comes from. And then last year's, Oregon, he tears it up. But, that's just Oregon, and that's the offense. And so, but yeah, you're right. It all comes from his time, which was not impressive. And so it's understandable that that's where people's heads are still with him. But
I'm hoping that DJU has a Bo Nix resurrection at FSU, because you can, when you got guys at 19, 20 years old, if they don't live up to their hype, it's 50% on them to me and 50% on the coach who couldn't get out of them, if the kid's working hard, which I don't think you could ever accuse Bo Nix of not working hard. No. But he went, and Kenny Dillingham was his OC at Oregon, and then of course Will Stein, and Kenny Dillingham got it out of him. They found the juice that he had, and look, I hope Sean Payton can for Bo Nix's sake, and Sean Payton needs to prove that he is as good of a coach as everybody thinks he is after Drew Brees.
Yeah, last year that left a bad taste in a lot of Broncos fans' mouths. That's for dang sure. So yeah, they are trying to reverse that trend, that downward trend they've been on, and hoping that Bo Nix and the magic touch of Sean Payton can make that a reality for them. But Bo Nix, starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos. Meanwhile, a trade within the NFC East went down earlier today as the Commanders and Eagles did some business. The Commanders trading wide receiver Jahan Dotson to the Eagles for 3 draft picks. They received the 2025 5th-round pick, a 3rd-round pick, and 2 7th-round picks in the 2025 draft from the Eagles. Commanders will send the Eagles a 2025 5th-round pick along with Dotson. That's where I aired. Yeah. And will receive a 3rd-round pick and 2 7th-round picks in the 2025 draft. He's just 24 years old. He's going to be now obviously moving on from Jaden Daniels and catching passes from Jalen Hurts, and they've got Devontae Smith, and they've got A.J. Brown, obviously, and Saquon Barkley. So now add him into the mix. What do you think for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Commanders as far as the Jahan Dotson move?
It is troubling to me if you're an Eagles fan and you got a receiver that wasn't good enough to be, like, he wasn't breaking the top at Washington, but also it's Washington, so if he can be better there with a far less pressure on him, considering he's about the 5th option. Plus, I think the Eagles had the best draft of all the drafts this year when, you not only get what they got early in the draft, but getting Anaya Smith, Johnny Wilson, like they've got so many weapons there for Jalen Hurts. And I mean, look, Jahan Dotson's only going to add to that and allow those younger players maybe a little bit more time to develop without having a key 3rd wide receiver role. But he's the 4th or 5th target anyway, because they've got Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley, and so less pressure situation for him, really. Just go and make plays, because he's probably going to be more open in Philly than he was in Washington.
I would certainly think so. Just a couple of other notes here from around the world of sports. In baseball, the Mariners have fired Scott Servais as their manager. They were, for 3/4 of the season, the number 1 team in the AL West, I would say. And now the Astros have overtaken them.
15-game swing. They were 10 games up, and now they're 5 games down.
And if you'll recall, I said this was going to happen. I said this a couple times when we were talking about the standings. You knew the Mariners were going to tank at some point, because that's what they do. That's what the Mariners do. It's as good as it was early on. This was like clockwork, baby. They've lost 8 of 9 games. And they can't hit very well right now. And so Scott Servais has been fired, and he was able to meet with the players as they I guess were playing the Dodgers, and told them that with their off day, they were going to reset and get ready for this stretch run. But obviously, he's not going to be a part of that. So that was ultimately his goodbye. They just got swept by the Dodgers. And, man, they're just falling further and further behind the Astros now. So I don't know what it is, that organization. They had a big offseason, but, man, you could just bank on this happening.
I'll tell you what it is their 3 big offseason acquisitions, Jorge Polanco, Mitch Garver, and Mitch Haniger, all were terrible.
With the Mitch Garver thing, you could kind of predict that. Like, they signed – he was a role player on the Rangers last year. He was a very good role player, very timely hitter, but he wasn't like a core, build your team around the guy.
He's not 24 years
old.
That's
what I mean. He's treated, though, as like a big free agent signing. I'm like, Mitch Garver? Really? That's cool, but not as like one of your top players.
Yeah, I mean, he's hitting below 200 this year. Jorge Polanco has not been Jorge Polanco, and Haniger also not good. So they had to go get Randy Arozarena, who wasn't having a good year, but has been better since he's there. The other thing that hurts them is that Julio Rodriguez, who's their superstar player, is having a down year himself. So all those hurt. Their pitching staff is badass. I mean, they have really good pitchers, but their lineup really, really disappointed them this year. And I'm not sure that Jerry DePito, the GM, isn't the next to go.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see that, just given the disappointment of being on top of the division for most of the season and then just completely cratering as we get to the time that matters most. So the Mariners are making a change at manager, and Scott Servais no longer the guy there. 2 more notes, one more baseball, one more Hollywood. The Reds have seen it made official. Joey Votto, longtime star in Cincinnati, 6-time All-Star, former MVP in the National League back in 2010. At 40 years old, he is officially retiring. Had an announcement in a video on social media that came out last night, and then had a little write-up as well. He said, "I was myself in this sport. I was able to be my best self. I played this sport with every last ounce of my body, heart, and mind. Thank you for everything." And he had a lot more. If you're a Joey Votto fan, you want to go read it and watch it. But great player.
I am indeed. I love Joey Votto. Joey Votto's a great ambassador for the game. Loves, I heard a story. You know what? I saw it on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. It was Bill Maher and Jerry Seinfeld. Of course, it's always Jerry Seinfeld. But they were talking about being Mets fans together. And Bill Maher said, I just love it. Like, you're sitting there and then, a player on the other team, just says, "Hey, Bill, thanks for coming out to the game. Really appreciate it." And Jerry was like, "Who's that?" Because that happened to me. And he's like, "Joey Votto." And he's like, "Joey Votto, same thing." Like, that's what he does. He's like, it's great. I saw a column this morning when I saw this. I think it was Awful Announcing said that Fox should do with Joey Votto what they did with Tom Brady. And I could not agree more. No offense to John Smoltz at all. But
boy, Rangers fans hate John Smoltz, man.
I mean, I'm not trying to bag on Smoltz at all. I'm not at all. But I do think that you put Joe Davis with a personality, a guy with a sense of humor, like Joey Votto, that loves the game and understands the game and where they're deficient in promoting their young stars, like Joey Votto, home run.
Yeah, so 40 years old, calling it a career, great player, has a very bright future in whatever he chooses to do. If that's up in the booth, that would make a lot of sense. So, best wishes to Joey Votto, a hell of a career. And then finally, circling back around, I had a couple of, entertainment notes at the beginning with Travis Kelce's, Happy Gilmore 2 cameo or role, however you want to refer to it. And circling back around now, Dancing with the Stars always has an athlete tie-in.
Yeah.
Season 33.
Yeah.
That's insane. That is insane.
They do 2 a year, but
that's a lot. 33. Like, if you're a fan, you've watched 33 seasons of this show. That's a lot. But they've announced their first performer for this upcoming season 33, and it is Steven Nadorshik. And I might be pronouncing that slightly off, which I apologize because I like to get pronunciations right. But you might remember him as the pommel horse Team USA gymnast that brought home the gold with his performance on the pommel horse early on in the Olympics, the bronze. That'll be a thing when the men's gymnast from U.S. win the gold, but he helped them win the bronze with his performance on the pommel horse, which is his only event. That was like his specialty. Yeah. He pulled off, Clark Kent was the meme going around. He pulled off the glasses, got on the pommel horse and became Superman and won the U.S. bronze. He is the first contestant that has been announced. They'll announce the rest of the cast in a couple of weeks. It looks like September the 4th on Good Morning America. But, yeah, I think that's very cool for him. And I know my Olympic-loving family members will be ecstatic that also love Dancing with the Stars to see him. So there you go. That's the first cast member, another sports tie-in. And there's a few things off of the radar.
I tried very hard to get him named Squints.
Because
he reminds me of Squints from The Sandlot. And I think that while Superman, obviously, look, you guys know I love Superman. I love, it's my mouse pad. I love him. I love Superman.
Batman guy over here, big surprise.
Well, I love both. I mean, but I'm a nerd. But I love Superman. And I appreciate that comparison. I do. But I think equally heroic in cinema history is Squints faking a drowning to finally meet Wendy Peppercorn. I think heroic.
That is... Yeah, okay.
He married her. He wound up marrying her.
It was very brave for him. Yeah. I don't know how heroic he was, but yes.
He wound up marrying her.
It was brilliant, yes.
Yeah, he wound up marrying the girl. You heard it at the end, and Squints is married to Wendy Peppercorn. I think, Squints would have been a better one for me, but I get the Superman thing.
Yeah, well, maybe that's something that catches on with that cast on Dancing with the Stars. Maybe he fakes an injury and like Julianne Hough comes rushing to his aid, and then they have their own version of Squints and Wendy Peppercorn when all said and done.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know if she's married or not. So
no,
if
she's not.
Okay,
she's not.
Cool. Well,
I know because I'm into Dancing with the Stars family.
Okay, well, then that's why you're like 33 is not a bunch of this 2 a year. It's not that much. It's been nearly 20 years of the show, but.
I married into a CBS and Dancing with the Stars family. That's
very
what
cool.
I married into.
So there you go. So a little Olympic flavor for the Dancing with the Stars cast. And I would imagine, based on their history, there's probably another one or two people that will be sports related.
Yeah.
That's just typically how it goes, like some former NFL player or something like that. But there you go. There's a few things off the radar.
When we come back, Will Backus, CBSSports.com, and they released their Big 12 predictions today. We'll talk with him about that. This is 365 Sports.
Hi, I'm Dana Hassel, President and CEO of American Bank. Waco is a great place for business, and for more than 70 years, American Bank has been the bank for business. We continue to invest in our growing community with state-of-the-art branches conveniently located to serve you within minutes. Our experienced bankers, lenders, and decision makers work directly with business owners like you every day, providing tailored solutions, timely answers, and local insights, face-to-face. Schedule a meeting with one of our bankers today and find out what makes American Bank the bank for your business. Member FDIC.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
He is to humanity what bacon is to breakfast. He is allowed to use his cell phone on an airplane. He is Cesar Leal of Leal's Mexican Restaurant.
I don't always eat Mexican food, but when I do, I prefer Leal's.
Leal's Mexican Restaurant, 9000 Panther Drive in Woodway, 254-772-8140.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Smokey out today, joined now by Will Backus, CBSSports.com. And Will, you guys did your Big 12 predictions. That's why I reached out to you. You guys are doing it all across the conference. But yours, you broke with the mold a little bit more in your second place pick with Oklahoma State. And I'm curious to talk about that. But when you go through all these now, how hard is it to do it, given the fact that the schedules are so uneven and unbalanced throughout the leagues, as opposed to before, where it's pretty easy to kind of guess where people were gonna fall?
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, you mentioned we did this for all four power conferences. The Big 12 was the absolute most difficult for multiple reasons. You mentioned the scheduling. Yeah, it is a little lopsided. I had Oklahoma State in second place, but Oklahoma State has to play both Utah and Kansas State during the regular season. That's tough, whereas Kansas only has to play Kansas State. So, yeah, the scheduling was a little bit lopsided. And then, honestly, it was really hard to separate probably the top 5 or 6 teams for me. I mean, I think that this is a league where you could look at really anybody in kind of the top half and be like, okay, I could see a path that they could win, or I could see a path that they could at least make the Big 12 championship game. So, yeah, I mean, it was a very difficult conference to suss out and really kind of get that final tiering.
What put Utah over the top for you over K-State? I think if you were to poll most people, that's the one matchup that is probably the most popular of a pick. But what put the Utes up there at the top?
Yeah, I mean, I love what they have coming back, all over the place. Obviously, Cam Rising's coming back for his 7th year of college football. I mean, he's to be honest, he's older than I am at this point. And so when you've got that at quarterback, I mean, that's experience that you really can't replace. But I think they also have really underrated skill talent with Money Parks. I think he's going to be a huge breakout. Dorian Singer, obviously he had some great experience at Arizona and USC. And then Brent Keithy, they're also 7th year tight end coming back from injury. That's the offense. And on defense, their front 7, I think, is probably the best front 7 in the Big 12, or it's definitely up there. That's kind of always been Kyle Whittingham's bread and butter. He's always got really tough teams that get dirty in the trenches. And I just think that they're really well made to come out and make a big impression in the first year. I love, Kyle Whittingham's track record. I love the experience that they have. And when I look at preseason rankings, I lean on experience over a lot of other things because there's just so much unknown when you're doing these projections. And so, I think it's that experience factor that really kind of put them over the edge for me.
You have Oklahoma State in second. So does Jerry Palm, who's listed right next to you. I'm getting to this point with Mike Gundy where I don't really need a reason to tell you why they're going to be towards the top of the league. It's just going to have to work out that way because he's just pretty steady.
Yeah, I mean, he's like you mentioned, he's super steady, and credit to my coworker Shahan, but he pointed this out. Oklahoma State tends to do a lot better when they're not projected to win the Big 12. Obviously, they came in 3rd in the Big 12 preseason media poll, so maybe that puts a chip on their shoulder. Maybe it's just something about Mike Gundy where he loves sort of outperforming expectations. But yeah, I mean, it's also he's earned the benefit of the doubt. He and Kyle Whittingham both are the most experienced coaches in the Big 12. They're battle proven. They've both shown that they can compete at the top of their respective conferences. Obviously, Mike Gundy's been doing it in the Big 12 a lot longer just because Oklahoma State's been in the Big 12 a lot longer. So, yeah, I mean, there's that. And then also with Oklahoma State, same thing with Utah, right? Oklahoma State has 21 starters coming back from last year's team. That's an absurd amount of returning production. I just had a hard time thinking, okay, well, this exact same team made it to the Big 12 championship game last year. Why can't they do it again? And so that's a big reason why I picked them to make it that far is just they're battle tested. They've got a lot of guys that know how to win in this conference, from coach down to, player and personnel, everything in between. So I see them making it to the Big 12 championship game.
Will, who's the hardest team for you to figure out right now on paper in the Big 12?
I think I had some difficulty with Arizona, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, they lost Jed Fish. He's a great coach. He did some amazing work rebuilding them, but they retained most of their top players in the transfer portal. Brent Brennan came in, did a great job of keeping Noah Fafita and Tetaroa McMillan and Sicario Davis. And so they've got some real superstar talent there. If I'm looking at a team like outside of the top 4 that I think, I wouldn't be surprised to see them, 10 wins near the end of the year, pushing for a Big 12 championship game appearance, it would be Arizona. I also think there's a little bit of bust potential just because while they did hold on to some superstars, they still did have some really important depth pieces and even some starters enter the transfer portal. You've obviously got, a new coach coming in. So I think it was a little hard to place them. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to get to probably 8, maybe even 9 wins. And I could see them doing more too. But yeah, it was a little hard to get them kind of in the right spot for me.
What team towards the bottom do you think could surprise people?
So I think I'm a little higher on Houston than a lot of people just because I love Willie Fritz. I know it took him some time to hit his stride at Tulane, but once he got going, he built Tulane into an absolute powerhouse. Of course, you've got questions about, well, how is he going to adjust to the jump to the Big 12? I know Houston's lost a lot to the transfer portal. But I also know a lot of people are really high on their quarterback, Donovan Smith. I've seen his name kind of rocketing up draft boards this year. And so they could have a real kind of gem on their hands in quarterback. You combine that with who they have at coach. I'm not saying they're going to come out and, set the world on fire. I think it'll be kind of a stretch for them even to kind of get into bowl contention. But I don't think they're going to be as bad as a lot of people think they are. And I don't see them finishing like dead last in the conference. I know they were picked 15th in the preseason media poll. I picked them to finish a little bit higher than that. Like I said, I've just got a lot of faith in Willie Fritz, and I think that they've got a really good quarterback that maybe a lot of people haven't quite adjusted for just yet.
So I know that there's a lot to take in terms of this article, so I don't want to spoil it and leave plenty for people to read, but everybody has their bold prediction on what's going to happen this season. And I will say yours is pretty bold, but I think it's one of those really interesting questions that people have in this expanded playoff is sort of where does the Big 12 fit in? Everybody's busy arguing like, can the SEC or Big 10 get 6 teams in any given year? Your bold prediction is that the Big 12 is able to get 2 college football playoff teams, and you think there's a handful that have a shot. But what made you go that direction as far as your bold prediction?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just the strength at the top of this conference. I see the Big 12 finishing with probably, 5 or 6 teams ranked. I think when you look at the, strength of schedule is a really important metric when it comes to figuring out college football playoffs, and conference perception plays a lot into it as well. So I think if you're looking at the end of the year, right, you're going to have, from my projections, you're going to have Big 12 champion Utah. Okay, well, they automatically make it in. But then you could have a 10 or 11 win Oklahoma State, 10 or 11 win Kansas State behind them, where their only losses, in Oklahoma State, maybe their only losses against Utah, right? Or maybe their only loss is against a really strong Kansas State team. I just think that it's going to be a real big logjam at the top of the conference. I think that it's going to be a really strong conference this year. And with all the strong teams, I think that's going to boost the Big 12 perception. And I think they might get a nod over. For me, it came down to the Big 12 and the ACC, right? The SEC is going to get probably 3 or 4 teams in. The Big 10 is going to get a few in. Notre Dame might sneak in there as an independent. So that really only leaves a couple spots. And if I look at the relative strengths of conferences, I just think the Big 12 is in a bit of a better place overall than the ACC, to where I could see a Big 12 team, a second Big 12 team sneaking in over a second ACC team as we sit here, just based off of how I think the year is going to kind of end up and how these teams are going to finish.
Do you, when you look at the Big 10 and that, a 9-3 Big 10 team, and I know this would happen in the SEC, so I'm not going to ask the question because 9-3 Ole Miss is in. But a 9-3 Big 10 team that's not, say, Ohio State, Michigan, or Oregon, do you think that team gets in?
I would say no. And that's because I think the only 9-3 team that you can make an argument, from the Big 10 sneaking into the playoff would probably be Michigan. Because as it stands, Michigan has to play 3 of the top 4 preseason AP poll teams, right? And so if those are their only 3 losses, and those are all close losses, then I could see the argument being made, well, maybe 9-3 Michigan deserves a nod. I don't see any Big 10 teams outside of those 3 that you mentioned being 9-3 and making it, because the other one I'd look at would be Penn State. Well, Penn State's schedule is pretty easy. So if they end up at 9-3, then something's probably gone wrong for them. And those 3 losses are going to be, at least 1 or 2 of them are going to be what you would look at as bad losses that they probably shouldn't have had. And then there's probably some other Big 10 teams there on the outside that would probably need to get to 10 wins to earn playoff consideration. So, yeah, outside of Ohio State, Oregon, or Michigan, I don't think I see a 9-3 Big 10 team making it in there.
Did anybody make as bold a prediction as Dennis did in the ACC one, where he predicted that ESPN would opt out of the ACC deal?
No, that's pretty bold, but Dennis is incredibly plugged in. Mm-hmm. I do not doubt his information. I'm sure it was a very informed, bold prediction. Not saying he's saying that's going to happen. I'm not putting that out there, but yeah, it was very bold, but I think the path that's going down is Florida State and probably Clemson are going to be free agents sometime in the next few years. I don't know how it's going to unfold, if it's going to come from a lawsuit, if it's going to come from the ESPN just being like, well, we're paying a lot of money for, other TV rights. We might need to cut the ACC. Whatever's going to happen, I do think that it's not going to end with Florida State and Clemson being in the ACC past the next few years.
Will Backus from CBS Sports. Will, thanks for hopping on. I know it was late notice. I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you again.
Yeah, always happy to hop on. I appreciate y'all.
All right. Will Backus from CBS Sports. Been with us a couple times. I dig the shirt in the picture that we have of him.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Yeah, it's a nice little aloha shirt, Hawaiian shirt. There.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was thinking when he started to talk about the Dennis Dodd prediction, bold prediction, he started saying, I don't think that's going to happen. And I was waiting for what's he going to slip here? And he said, in a few years. And it's like, well, yeah, we all, we all know it's that open-ended. I was hoping that maybe he was going to be in the next year. And then we go, ooh. But yeah, that's the open-ended date, if you will, that everybody's got. Yeah, something's going to happen in the next few years. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, I don't think anybody else can really say much beyond that. But Dennis certainly made a lot of noise with that. It's interesting to see how certain things and certain reports are taken at times, how they're taking. I don't know, just depending on what you're wanting the narrative to be, or what you hope that information is. Do you take and run with it and validate it right away, or you go that's complete BS. You know what I'm saying? And so he put that out there, and it suddenly was picked up as though he was saying that this was happening.
Yeah.
And that it wasn't just a bold prediction preseason article. It was breaking news, Dennis. And I'm just I don't think that's what he was saying, but that's what I mean is that's how it's
make a bold prediction.
Yeah.
That's bold.
It is bold.
It's very bold to say in February that ESPN, also part of these lawsuits, by the way,
right,
would opt out of that deal and go, we don't need this headache.
This deal that's very favorable to us, apparently. Yeah.
Opt out of this deal and we don't need this headache. And then turn around and potentially make a deal with one of those two schools or both of them to join one of the conferences that they still do have a TV agreement
That's
with.
the part to me that I never hear an answer on is, so you're just going to cast aside a bunch of schools? If you're the person whose theory is that, it's all going to get trimmed up and, or even I don't know, just there's various things, whether you're remodeling a conference or just what it looks like in the future. It's easy to see in the future how you're going to say, hey, if you're not one of these 30 teams, you're not involved. Because, what's Vanderbilt going to say when the rest of the groups Georgia, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and, Michigan? What argument do you have if they say you don't belong in this group, Mm-hmm. But this idea of, the ACC is just going to slit the throat of, 6 teams, or that, and it's just or the ESPN more so. It's but aren't they still going to want to do business with them after that? So you're just going to rip apart their whole livelihood and then sign them to a lesser basketball deal because they'll just have to do it. That's the part of it to me, where the politics come into play. And I can see them doing that because it's just a cutthroat business move. But are there not some ramifications if you start going out like that? If you just see ya half the conference, we're cutting away all your money, and you're going to have to be a shell of yourselves because we really want Florida State in the SEC. I just don't know how that's practical, but that's me. I don't know.
I've seen people trying to connect the dots of, ESPN made these couple of firings. You know, NBA is really expensive. How can you save money or maybe redirect money? And if you could redirect money into the conferences that you're already aligned with, and then save some money on the back end because you're just taking ACC money and giving some of it to the SEC and some of it to the Big 12, depending on who they pick up, then you could be okay, well, we don't have to have this network anymore. We can,
right? Yeah, I mean, there's explanations for it.
There's all those things, but I think that's jumping about 12 dominoes ahead.
Yeah,
before the first one's even been knocked down.
And there's there are people involved here. You can't just press B and then you move on to the next challenge. Just press A and there's no ramifications for any decisions that you make. There's politicians. There's states that, are involved in these moves. So this idea of we'll just, cut half the conference and just leave them on their own. It's but aren't you going to want Duke basketball? Yeah. I don't know. That's the part where I don't ever really hear a clear answer on how all this, potential bloodshed for those that go down that route of the culling of it, if you will. Like I just wonder what those repercussions would look like, and maybe they're not enough to matter in the long run. I don't know, but I just feel like there is that step that just kind of gets glossed over. Of like, no, there's going to be some pushback. There's very much going to be some pushback. You're not just going to be able to do that and keep on moving. But yeah, we're in an interesting time for sure, and that was a prediction that. It's easy to see why it caught a lot of gas, but it is humorous to me. I'm like, what gets treated a certain way report-wise versus what gets treated a certain way depending on if it fits the narrative that you're looking to push or not. And so if you're somebody who, or a belief, not even a narrative, but a belief. So if you're, somebody that believes that that's what's going to happen, then that reinforced it seeing Dennis say that. And I can understand that, but I don't think he was like, doing anything but making a bold prediction. I don't think he was making a report. So that's why I say that's how you take it certain types of ways.
He would have been happy to make that report if it was true.
Well, he'd be talking about it a lot more if that was actually happening. Yeah.
He would have already been on this show. I can tell you
exactly
that.
Right. He would have tweeted about it a bit more than just like, here's the article to it, and probably would have been a bit more in-depth on that. But yeah, he's well connected. And I mean, I don't think that something like that is completely out of the realm of thought, but it was fun to see that kind of get people all rattled and rustled up again when it came to what's going to happen in that particular case.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last couple things we need to get to before we go to the top five here in a few minutes. But speaking of Dennis Dodd, and this was a nice segue to this, he put this out today, and I sent it to Garrett, and it was very interesting to me. And this is something I think that's been talked about before, but let's see. Hold on, let me find it so I can read it out loud. So this is an article that's about DJU, DJ Uiagalelei. Between 2000 and 2023, there have been 145 star quarterbacks, according to Roth's research, and that's one of the guys he was talking to for this article. Only one of those have won a Super Bowl, Matt Stafford with the Rams in 2022, and it was his second team in his 13th year. Only 7 of those 140 were overall number 1 picks. So it is a very inexact science. Mm-hmm. And I just found that I thought the number would be a little bit higher in that of the 5-star quarterbacks. But, man, that's like it's really awesome if you get to be that 5-star, but it's also pretty damn daunting, I would say, given the expectations and the things that are put on you and all of that. I'd never really kind of thought of it from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's a heavy is the what's the phrase?
Yeah, heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah. So that's basically what 5-star quarterbacks are treated like, or young kings. And with that comes a lot of pressure and a lot of outside and inside just influence and pressure to perform and be that guy because. Not always important for you to be that guy, but then the way that extends out as well, and there's a lot of people invested in, these young men, and it's brutal. It's like being an adult a bit quicker than you expect because there's people, family wise or coach wise or university wise that are banking on you to perform, and especially now in this era where you're clearly getting paid. Now it's like, oh, well, you're not even a college kid. Now you're a pro player. You're making $1 million according to volquest.com or whatever. Now you really got to perform. There's no kid gloves with this. So, yeah, I think some of that probably disrupts guys from panning out better. Just the whole being 17, 18, 19 years old and having all this pressure on your shoulders to perform at a very high level. And just also the fact that recruiting is not an exact science, no matter how much it, wants to be and is getting closer to being, it's not and never will be an exact science. So yeah, there's definitely misses on guys as well. And guys that just aren't built to perform at the college football level. And no matter how good they were at, Lee High School or whatever. So yeah, that's it's not as much as you would think, and that's interesting.
And I think I read it. Of course, anything about him I'm going to read now because he's FSU's quarterback. But I do think it's going to come down to who is he now? Is he the quarterback still that had a topsy-turvy run at Clemson? And look, he wasn't there last year, and they still weren't as good as they had been. So it wasn't all him. You know, I know that he certainly didn't reach the heights that they expected him to as the guy to follow up Trevor Lawrence, but Cade Klubnik hasn't hit that either as well. So, you know, I'm not trying to bag on Clemson, but like there's clearly a bigger thing going on there than just one guy not being up to the Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson standard that they had. And you know, everybody wanted him, and he was better last year at Oregon State than he'd been before. So was he not playing under Brandon Streeter, the offensive coordinator, in the right system for him? And
I think
all
his
these things,
play gets blown out of proportion. Like, he wasn't terrible, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but he gets talked about like he was just like hot garbage or something. And I don't know. I don't think that's the case. I think he definitely has room for improvement, but I don't think he was just. I don't know. I feel like he just gets talked about so disrespectfully.
Do you think he's taking the blame for Clemson more than the rest of Clemson is taking the blame for Clemson?
Probably, yeah. But I also think he has more opportunity to do that because I don't think anybody's asking the tight end about know his culpability in the whole thing. But you mentioned Cade Klubnik, and yeah, man, he's got to perform this year. You know, I do the Earl Campbell Award stuff, and he's dotted that like a couple of times, maybe for like an honorable mention. But it's like, damn, man, I'm like thinking you need to be like at the end of the year at the award banquet, like as Clemson starting quarterback, you know, and you're like not even where close. So I'm hopeful he's going to have a big year, selfishly for that reason, just to have more of a spotlight when it comes to that award, and has some Clemson influence since they don't typically have a lot of Texas guys, but. Yeah, he's got some work to do to live up to his own expectations for sure.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't. I
think DJU will be good at Florida. I don't know if he'll be as good as what they had last year. But
they absolutely, he's not going to be, and it would be unfair for anyone to expect him to do what Jordan Travis was doing last year before he got hurt. I mean, he was. And I mean, the last 2 years really with Jordan Travis was so fantastic. So, yeah, it'd be silly. It would be silly to think that and put those kind of expectations. I think that's the problem that you have at a lot of places because you are successful. Like, it's not like Nick Saban's Alabama wide receivers forever that was like, oh, Devontae Smith won the Heisman. Well, here's another guy and another guy and another guy that are just like that or whatever it is. Like, it's hard. So you can't just expect the next guy to be who the other guy was just because they might have had similar ratings in high school. Everybody's different. And there are other mitigating factors in all that. For example, Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence played for Tony Elliott, who was one of the best offensive coordinators in the country at Clemson. DJ Uiagalelei didn't really play for Tony Elliott all that much because Tony Elliott eventually went to Virginia when he had his first 2 full seasons as the starter there for Clemson. So, there's different, there's factors. There's absolutely factors. The offensive coordinator he played for is not there anymore, and it's now Garrett Riley. So that all happens for a reason, right? And there are things. So, and that brings us to this, and we'll this is the last thing I have on the docket, unless Craig's got something I missed. But these are it ties in nicely because of the 5-star quarterback thing, but the top 25 quarterbacks for the class of 2025, and none of these guys are uncommitted. Garrett, you follow recruiting quite closely, and that's a bit of a change. Like, at this point, normally you'd see a top 25 list where at least like 2 or 3 of these guys are still not committed.
Which On3 account is this one from? Do you know? There's like 17 of them.
Yeah. I'm just putting it under the...
It's just harder for me to see, so I'm just trying to find it.
I sent it to you in your email.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I sent it to your email. So, knowing that would...
Well, I put it on 3, and there's like 10 accounts drop down.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to figure out which one.
Yeah. No. So, but number 1, Garrett, feel free to chime in. Bryce Underwood, who is committed to the Tigers.
Yeah, so... This is going to be weird because the last time LSU really doesn't have success with quarterbacks they've recruited traditionally. Like Jamarcus Russell was pretty good. And then the last time they recruited a high caliber quarterback was Miles Brennan out of Mississippi. And he just flayed out, man. Like he did not develop. I think he ended up hitting the portal and then like retiring early. So Bryce Underwood comes in. I think this is the highest quarterback recruit they've ever had. He was Gatorade Player of the Year last year, threw for over 3,400 yards and like 42 touchdowns. So if he can come into this offense and he's going to have the weapons around him, which quarterbacks traditionally haven't had, other than Burrow and Jaden Daniels, who both transferred in. So it's a different world for LSU, and having a quarterback come in with this caliber and having the offense fit them and the playmakers around him, Bryce has the opportunity to be probably the best quarterback ever recruited by LSU.
Wow. That's a lot to put on him, Garrett. What if he hurts you? If he's going to feel the pressure?
Well, I mean, I've been hurt before. It would be nothing.
Yeah. Tavian Singh, like you see Ohio State, I'm not going to go through all these. Keelan Russell was the one who was committed to SMU and then changed, right? And now they have Ty Hawkins.
Yep.
Yeah. So look, SMU had the guy who's ranked third, but they now still have the guy who's ranked 14th. So it's a new day in Dallas for sure.
Yeah, it's Rhett Lashley at work there, and they made up for that pretty well. A loss like that could have been really hard to overcome, but I think they're sitting just fine with Ty Hawkins. So yeah, Keelan Russell though, but yeah, LSU, Ohio State, Georgia, SC, A&M, the top 5 commits as far as teams go, and sounds about right. I mean, that's 5 pretty big time programs there, but yeah, to see SMU in a top 15 position, I just think that's, the reality of where they are right now, being in the ACC and having Rhett Lashley as your head coach, and obviously being able to use money in a way you weren't ever able to before when you were previously successful, to be able to return to being able to use that, but on the up and up, I think is something that's obviously propelled them a bit higher than they would otherwise be. All that added together, and they're sitting in an interesting spot. You got to go win games this year. And back up some of the talk. But, I think that's an attractive spot for all the reasons that I mentioned.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of names of people following this list. And we don't talk a lot about recruiting, but I did.
Because, half these guys will be in the transfer portal after 1 year. That's why we don't talk a lot about it. Yeah. We do at times, but the portal's just made it to where, half this list might be in the transfer portal a year from today, for all we know. So that's just what makes it. Well, not a year from today, but 2 years from today.
Yeah. But Memphis is on the list, and TCU's on the list, Tech's on the list, Maryland on the list, Iowa State, Stanford, Madden Amaliava, who's Nico's younger brother, is going to UCLA.
Is he getting $7 million too, or is that just a Tennessee thing?
I don't know if UCLA has that kind of money.
Well, they do now in the Big Ten. KJ Lacey's a really good player. Sark's going to have a quarterback, and he's going to have a solid quarterback room. I think it just at this point, it's like, who are these guys that they keep getting every year is actually going to play for them? I think is the question, but that's a luxury, because if he doesn't, it just means that Arch Manning stuck around for another year, or some other dude you've recruited is really good and better. So that's not an issue, but just they're recruiting it so well that in this era, you can't hold guys like Bryles could back in the day, where Bryce Petty, you got to sit around and wait, or you're going to go sit in the portal and sit there and not play for an entire year, which was not what guys wanted to do most of the time. Now, I know Bryce says what he says, but in a different world, he's not at Baylor. He's not sticking around for 4 years and not getting paid and not playing and doing that. I think that freedom of movement makes these lists look interesting once you get a couple years in and see where they all are still playing, or if they've made changes. But Texas is going to be loaded at quarterback, whether KJ Lacey plays it down for them or not. But I know they really like him, and he's a really, really good player. Yeah, I'm just going to point a couple things out on this list. Achilles Smith Jr., again, I feel old. Also, how hard would it have been? Oregon, too. That's cool.
Yeah, or where his dad played, at Oregon. He was going to probably go, if he wasn't a good football player, he's probably going to wind up at Oregon, just because, his dad's a hero there. I'm sure every time he went, it was a blast. They're an elite athletic program and all these different things. So he was probably going to go. But I would say that's one of the harder ones you'd have to make a pitch against, if you're like, hey, I know that you really want to go to Oregon and it looks really cool there, but have you considered Michigan State? And he's like, I appreciate your interest, but you're really going to have to come with a big thing to get me to do that. Also, Carter Smith, who's going to Michigan, I would like to point out that he is the second greatest athlete in the history of Bishop Verrell High School in Fort Myers, Florida. Garrett, who's the greatest?
I would say Dion.
He didn't go to Bishop Verrell High School.
Oh, I don't know. Who?
I went to Bishop Verrell High School. The answer was supposed to be me.
Okay. You, Paul.
Oh, thank you. No.
You said greatest athlete? Sorry that our brains didn't immediately connect those two.
No, he went to my high school. He goes to my high school, still there.
It's good seeing Adam Schobel, who's on his third commitment now, but with the family tie-in, seems like that's where he always wanted to be. So that was a good get for TCU, especially in light of losing their own quarterback commit. Texas Tech and Lloyd Jones, that's a guy who's a super-looking athlete. So I know they're excited about him. Alex Mansky, Iowa State's recruited quarterback pretty well. So, yeah, good to see some Big 12 flavor on there. And then, to see your Memphises. And I got to start remembering that SMU's not a G5. So, really, Memphis the only G5 on here, it looks like.
FedEx, baby.
Yeah. I mean, hey, whatever it takes. So, yeah, good for them. And good to see that it's not just 1 through 25, some team from two conferences, because that would be awfully boring. So, good to see a little bit of a mix mash of teams here.
Texas Tech has Lloyd Jones on the list. I would love for them to get a wide receiver named Harry, so you could have Harry and Lloyd from Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, sure.
But
so long as they win games. But, that'd be Lloyd and Harry. That'd be good.
Yeah, that would be great. All right. It's time for the top 5 today as we complete we move on through our perfect college football team, the offensive line. That's coming up next. This is 365 Sports.
For Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome in. Paul Catalina's Top 5, the perfect college football team, continues today as we jump into the offensive line. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Use promo code 365sports for 10% off of your order. They got another auction coming on up. So go to bidonbeef.com and find out when that is and all the details. Let's dive into the offensive line, the most important position on the team, and not just because I was a former, 1.5 string left guard in my days at Bishop Verrill High School. Not first, not second, somewhere in the middle. 6th offensive lineman. We'll call me that. We'll call me the 6th offensive lineman. I was plug and play, baby.
Sixth man of the year.
Yeah. Look, everybody needs a 6th one because you don't know what's going to happen to one of the top 5. So, anyway, I really hope that none of my high school friends see that. It's going to happen, and I'm going to get a text. I know it is. Left tackle, Kelvin Banks Jr. at Texas. You know what I love about Kelvin Banks Jr.? Before I get into the actual, why he's so lethal. You see that? That's a punch right there, baby. That's old school. That's Nate Newton. That's Larry Allen. That's a good old punch. Now, look, it's better for everybody and all the way around. Tyron Smith has 15% body fat, but he's just carved up. You see a lot of these guys, and now they're just gigantic and shredded up. And it leaves me nostalgic for the time where a punch could still be an elite athlete. And Kelvin Banks has that. Obviously, look, Quinn Ewers does not have to worry about Kelvin Banks' guy most of the time. Now, he did have some problems with Braylon Trice last year in the playoffs, but that puts him in a fraternity of everyone who's ever played Braylon Trice in his career. So, and that was just one of, maybe his worst game of the season. Most of the time, you could really rely on him. And this is one of the better players in the country.
Again, going to be a high draft pick, going to be a really high draft pick. That's not necessarily going to be the case for everybody on this list, though, as we get to the next couple days. You'll see. But Kelvin Banks at Texas is my left tackle. Now, even though he's probably playing left tackle at LSU, I'm going to take Will Campbell as my right tackle because I feel he's got nice position flex. He's also probably going to wind up seeing some time at guard when he gets to the next level, I would say, because he's built like a guard. Also, guess what? Punch there. And that'll go away when he gets to the NFL. But Garrett Nussmeier, this is his best friend in the entire world. Even if they're not like really best friends, this is his best friend in the entire world because this is the guy who's going to allow him to stay upright most of the time. This is the guy who, if you watch back film, I watched back some today, some game film, on a lot of Jaden Daniels' big runs last year, he would watch where 66 was going, and if 66 knocked a guy like into a place where he knew he could get past, he ran. So Will Campbell is a machine at tackle, and I would not want to be across from him. His arms are so long they don't fit in this picture right here. That is what you want from an offensive lineman, especially on the outside at tackle. Let's go to center. Parker Brailsford, who is now at Alabama. This is him last year at Washington. He followed Kalen DeBoer to Alabama. I could not find a high enough res picture of Parker Brailsford in his spring uniform, so that's why it shows him here at Washington. But he has transferred. He followed Kalen DeBoer there. This was not a battle. There was no, when I went through the offensive linemen throughout the country, there's about 12 that I considered to put on this list. There was one center I considered on this list, and it was Parker Brailsford, who is very good. I think the best interior offensive lineman in the country, and someone who really knocks people around and is the field general for that offensive line so well at Washington. They played great last year. And maybe the biggest get in the transfer portal, I think, for Kalen DeBoer when it comes to installing his culture and having a center that can help his quarterback understand the new systems he's going to be running. Jalen Milroe really liked playing with Parker Brailsford. He's thrilled. And it's not like he was playing with slouches before, but they needed a center, and they went out and got the absolute best one they could get. Left guard, Donovan Jackson at Ohio State. Ohio State is the best roster in the country. You've heard me say it a million times. He is certainly part of that. He is going to knock people around. Huge interior lineman, not just wide but tall. Also, you can't see it here, but punch. So got a little bit of that too. Really, really good. On the run blocking, he's going to have two great running backs in Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins to block for this year. Will Howard will really enjoy the skills of Donovan Jackson, a big dude who is really lethal. And I had to save the best for last here. Tate Ratledge from Georgia. This is him sitting out the Orange Bowl last year. So some Georgia players did. But, I mean, this guy has used the words, I like to party, more than once in his life, and it's probably a daily thing for him. This is a guy who, if you say anything bad about the movie Smoking the Bandit, he will punch you in the throat. You don't want to do that around Tate Ratledge. And in spite of the fact that he looks not awesome, but awesome, because that's how he would say it, honestly, he has gotten in a fight over a Dodge Charger. I promise you that this guy has gotten in an actual argument, and maybe a physical fight in his life, over which year of Dodge Charger is better, or what is better, a Charger or a Camaro. That has happened. Because, look, he not only has the mullet, right? He not only has the mullet, he has the lines, too. This guy is straight out of 1987, and I couldn't love him more for it. But in addition to all that, and being awesome, Tate Ratledge is also one hell of an offensive lineman. And anybody who's played with him can tell you that he will absolutely take up space. He is not going to let your defensive tackles just get in there. He is great at picking up the blitz as well, because one of the things that I think people do with Georgia a little bit more is take some chances because you got to, because they're going to beat you if you do or if you don't. So if you do take a chance. So if they're going to send a linebacker, Tate Ratledge really good at picking those up and doing that. Now, I'm not sure what side of the line he's going to play in Georgia this year, and they do like to play everybody kind of all over the place. But Tate Ratledge, background character in the Ballad of Ricky Bobby, is certainly going to be our right guard. And I will, full transparency here, it came down to him and another player. But come on, it's Paul Catalina's top 5. You don't think this guy is getting in my top 5? Billy Ray Cyrus here? I mean, come on. This guy's destined for greatness. I'm telling you right now. We will see him at an Eddie Money concert soon. No, Eddie Money's dead, isn't he? That's too bad. Rest in peace, Eddie Money. We miss you. This is the top 5. We had a great show today. Thanks for watching. We're going to wrap it up right now. I'm going to wrapping it up. Thanks to Craig. Thanks to Adam Rittenberg. Thanks to John Machota. Had a fun time. Have a great week, everybody. We'll be back again tomorrow. We're going to have Houston's new athletic director on the show at some point. We're still trying to finalize the time. So that's coming up. And, of course, thanks to Texas Beef House for the top 5. Have a good night, everybody.